our regularly scheduled official action meeting when we will vote on matters which have been discussed in previous meetings. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone, state their name and their address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. I'd ask too that everyone in the audience would remember that we do have a return time to come back up if you have more comments to make after everyone has had a chance the first time. I would also ask that the board and the audience would take note on page BA3. BA3 under item 5A under other business, there is a recommendation in regards to general obligation bonds. We will be pulling this resolution from the agenda tonight. We have asked our bond counsel and financial counsel to not attend this evening. We will discuss this under other business tonight and attempt to come to consensus as to when we can get this on for a later work session, combination work session action agenda. I did receive 5 phone calls from board members today asking that this would be pulled from the agenda. Therefore, we have pulled this from the agenda. Again, item 5B. Okay, we'll come back to item number 1, which is a recommendation for approval. I'll ask for approval of the minutes of the 727th and the 728th meeting held on 10/17 and 10/22 as circulated. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mrs. Krieger. Questions or comments on the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 2, committee reports, facilities, buildings, and grounds. Mr. John Schilling.
No report, Mr. President.
Any questions or comments for under facilities, buildings, and grounds? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2B, community services and policy. Mr. Don Hill.
Yes, there are no policies tonight to bring forward. We have a number of policies we'll be bringing forward next month at that time. I would like to take the opportunity, since at this time, is to acknowledge the North Penn Educational Foundation, which I'm an ad hoc member of. I don't believe the North Penn Educational Foundation gets the recognition that it deserves. The foundation is a nonprofit tax-exempt organization created to sponsor enrichment programs which extend beyond the regular school programs offered at the North Penn School. The board foundation is made up of concerned North Penn citizens of the district, which include business leaders, educators, and parents, and funding is raised to their efforts for the community. It's a very difficult undertaking that this group has taken on, and they've served the district well, but I don't believe they get the recognition that they deserve, and I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that organization.
Any questions or comments for Don? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2C, elementary education. Mr. Bill Allen.
Yes, Tom. I thought I had a report. Now I'm not so sure. We were going to vote on adding, in addition to Knapp School, and some modulars in Nash to handle the elementary growth problem. I assumed that was part of the bond issue, so now I'm not sure what we're going to do.
That's a separate, that's on page BA2 under item 4B under the superintendent's report.
Yes.
Yeah, that is there, and I
assume it's still on the agenda.
That is still on the agenda,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. End of report.
Questions or comments for Bill? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2D, secondary education. Mr. Pat Mosey.
No report, Mr. President.
Any questions or comments for Pat? Okay, we'll move on to item 2E, special education and student services. Mrs. Sharice Krieger. Questions or comments for Sharice? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2F, support services. Mr. David Whites.
No report.
Questions or comments for David? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2G, finance. Mrs. Vicky Scherer.
Yes, I wanted to make mention that in tonight's meeting, we will be asked to accept the auditor's report, which we received at the last committee meeting. And also, again, under other business, given what the outcome is of the earlier vote regarding the modulars, or the expansion of NAP, again, we will be coming back to the table once that decision, which would affect the exact amount of dollars of the bond, will be coming forward. Other than that, attached with the auditor's report, there's also an item to extend the current agreement with the auditor for an additional 2 years, which was also under discussion at our last meeting. Furthermore, on the issue of the Keenest Road site, there are financial information that Dennis has worked up in recent days, and if need be, that discussion can be entered at the time of the motion.
Okay.
End of the report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Vicky, finance? Hearing none, we'll move on to item H, personnel. Mrs. Donna Mendel.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Dr. Bose had promised he would do, he has come forward with a recommendation that he will provide to us tonight under the superintendent's report to fulfill the wish by this board and the community that we hire an assistant superintendent to serve in the capacity of curriculum and instruction here in this school district, a very large school district. We have not had any such person in that position, specifically an assistant superintendent, since I believe the 80s. And it was a practice that's now going to be restored here this evening with at least 5 votes. So I look forward to hearing Dr. Bose tell the community more about Dr. Hassler, and would anticipate that approval will be made tonight under the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Donna. Questions or comments for Donna under personnel?
Tom, since I've been I've expressed concerns regarding the filling of this position, I'd like to at this time thank Dr. Bose for moving forward and bringing forward a candidate with the background, scope of background and credentials that he has, and I'm just very appreciative to see this very important position being brought forward with a nominee.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Clemens, I don't know if the microphones are working, sir. Can you hear us in the back?
You hear in the back? No?
No one in the back in here.
Should you take a 5-minute recess?
Is that any better?
Yeah.
A little better? Yes. Pat, say something.
Yeah, I can hear you.
How about on that side? Vicky, John? Sounds good. That better?
Okay.
Okay.
I can't hear you, it's fine.
Okay.
I can't either, I'm not telling you.
We'll move on to item I, legislative. Mrs. Vicky Scherer.
There's just some important issues on the table, and I'd like to ask that we get some review on this regarding the changes to Chapter 14 and 16. Also, I understand that there's some extreme proposals on the funding that's expected to hit the legislature soon, not only tax reform, but there's also refunding issues that I saw in the latest legislative report. I think by the next meeting, I'd like to collect some more information on that so we get a handle on exactly where the legislation is heading. And we may need to consider some resolutions on those fronts.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a
Where will
comment.
that be coming from, Vicki? From you?
Pardon me, more background information? Well,
Yeah.
there's been there was a notice sent to us recently on those issues, and I think that each of us need to, get additional information. I think, well, Judy would be Chapter 14 and 16 information because that's special ed. Perhaps Dennis, as far as the changes in the allocations as to what it means to us as a district.
Property taxes also. That'll be a
Right.
major change.
Very quickly, I can tell you about Chapter 14 and 16.
They're currently holding state hearings throughout the Commonwealth, and recently one was held in King of Prussia, and some of our administrators participated, and many of our parents, some of whom are here this evening. It's inconclusive at this point. They're gathering information, and then there will be some decisions made, so it's several months down the road yet until we get something definitive from the state.
Do they have a working draft bill now?
They have a working draft, but they're asking for comments. There's some concerns with the draft as it currently exists.
Okay, well, perhaps it would be good for us to receive the draft that they're working on, so that if we want to consider adding input. It's hard to comment when you don't know exactly what's being proposed at this point, so that they can take that into consideration.
We can provide that
along
for
with the
you.
hearings that have taken place. Thank you.
Also see that there is some action going on with prevailing wage.
Right.
Don't know where it'll go, but there's definitely some movement for talks more about the prevailing wage issue. Any other questions, comments?
Yes,
Don?
I have a comment. A point of irritation for me is that the legislature, so wise in Pennsylvania, is coming up more with different ways that we can tax our taxpayers, whether it be income or whatever other way to do it, and putting the burden back on us to impose those taxes, whether it be reducing real estate and putting it on income or whatever, how we play the game. A tax is a tax, call it what you will. If the state would concentrate on paying for all the mandates they lay on the district, pay for all the busing and pay for all the things that they say we got to do, we wouldn't have the burden that we're having today of trying to raise the funds to keep the school district going. If they would just pay for their mandates and not worry about how we can raise taxes. Editorial.
Gentlemen, I just want to mention that tonight, under the superintendent's report again, item G, there is a letter of intent for the purpose of detaining stormwater for North Montague. Yes, and we're looking, I count 3 votes, I believe, and I'm hoping that there's at least 2 more to do what is vitally important, and I believe there's a direct benefit to not only the ABTS, but ourselves included. And it is a wise move to participate in this agreement, and it's more than neighborly, it's the right thing to do for the 2 property owners.
Again, that's item 4G. Pointing that out.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments on the North Monco Technical Career Center? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 2K, Merck Science Partnership. Mr. David Whites or Mr. John Schilling?
Thank you. We do have a report this evening. The start of the school year has marked the time for teachers to begin building relationships with students. Our young scientists and mathematicians have started this year with classroom investigations prompted by the experiences of our K-8 staff in summer training as leader teachers or peer teachers. Planning is now underway with our partner districts in New Jersey to share ideas in the area of curriculum enhancement, student assessment, and staff development programs. Representatives from North Penn were involved in a joint planning meeting during October. We hope to benefit from the effort of our partner districts in enhancing our science and mathematics programs. Leader teachers have recently completed the first of their 3 school year follow-up sessions. The first session was planned for professional development in 2 areas, leadership skills and technology telecommunications training. These sessions were facilitated by Susan Sinkinson from the Merck Institute and Carol James, a technology trainer. Many leader teachers will also be involved in work on an assessment project. Teams of teachers will develop new assessments in science and mathematics to pilot in their classes. They will be directed by Ted Chittenden from the Educational Testing Service and by Dr. Carol Stearns and Susan Sinkinson from the Merck Institute. I'd like to thank Donna Brown and David Decker for bringing this report to us about the Merck Science Partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Questions or comments for David? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 2L, long-range planning. Tom Clemens, Donna Mengel, Vicki Sher, David Whites. Any comments on long-range planning?
I think we should turn it over to Dr. Mangano.
Okay.
I believe you have the report, Donna, in front of you? I don't have a copy in front of me.
You don't have a copy in front of you?
No, I do not.
Well, we're going to share this, Dr. Mangano, because the credit is yours and Dr. Bose, and I'm not going to take this. But let me start out, though. On November 20th, 1996, Dr. Bose, Dr. Mangano, Dr. Judy Miller, Dr. Betty Robinson, Ellen Allen, Ella Rochon, and Jeffrey Jordan presented the North Penn School District Long-Range Plan at the Strategic Plan Review held at Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. A thorough technical and qualitative review was conducted by both the Regional Director, Division of the School-Based Improvement Bureau of Curriculum and Instruction, and a local review team. There was a panel of 6 folks there. Commendations and recommendations will be forwarded to this district within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Aside from reading a report, I'd like to say that if there was ever a time I would look forward to seeing Channel 16 show up to an event, it was at this review session. I was never so proud of this school district as I was to listen to the professionals that we had provide the long-range plan to a highly qualified, well-scrutinized group of people who were there merely to make sure that this district, regardless of its size, was doing what was right for this local community, and that answers and plans were not just being sloughed off as some sort of onerous chore, that a real true effort was put forth to put a long-range plan together. Not only was I impressed with the skills and spontaneity and answers provided by our professional staff, it should be mentioned that Mrs. Ellen Allen was a most gentle spirit and an eloquent speaker on behalf of the community. And that was the reason why she was invited, and gave a beautiful perspective from the community as somebody who volunteered from the very beginning on the plan. I really wish Channel 16 was there, because the questions provided by or required by the panel to be answered were strident. They were somewhat aggressive, and there was no chance to give a long-winded answer or to just say something cute. They were specific questions, and this our professional team was able to give the right answer spontaneously, and I was never so proud of everybody. So I'm going to turn the rest of this report over to Dr. Mangano.
Thank you. I do have one now. I'm going to use Johnny's. No, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I heard today from the one of our supervisors that went down that North Penn will be receiving commendations for a long-range plan. Probably in 2 areas. One will be that we were able to do this with such efficiency and professionalism in such a short period of time. So we're very thrilled about that. And the other one was the community involvement that we had, which so far has exceeded any group that they've looked at in terms of the numbers of community members that we had. So that's something to be very proud of. The other thing to report on the long-range plan update, we have looked very closely at North Monco Technical Career Center and looking to see where we would in fact match their long-range strategic plan. Dave Decker will be part of the review team from North Penn, who will go down to review the North Monco long-range plan, and we do have the interface with what we need to do to work with them, particularly in the areas of curriculum integration and the senior project requirements, portfolio assessment, career education, facilities and meeting individual needs, and technology integration. To give you also an update as to where we are as we're beginning to look at the implementation of the long-range plan, we have begun to help our professional staff know and understand the academic standards and expectation, and we use the in-service day on November 5th for grades 10 through 12 and November 7th for early dismissal K through 9. To help people know and understand the 53 academic standards and certainly the content standards that will be brought forth probably after the first of the year. Curriculum Coordinating Council has been reviewing the Go-1 process. There are committees to review and make recommendations to the Board of School Directors regarding graduation requirements, senior project, and academic options. The technology status report will be presented to the Board of School Directors on December 2nd. The finance report was presented on November 12th. The facilities report and recommendations have been presented in anticipation of a decision November 21. You will continue to receive updates, as usual, throughout all the processes that we begin to put in place and the committees that we begin to work on as we look at how to implement the long-range plan.
I'd just like to add that I think the review team was most surprised in a few areas that we had so many reports that covered so many diverse areas, such as diversity, student life, and we were only one of 2 districts in the entire state that put forward a finance plan, which they truly appreciated, and obviously we were the largest district to do so. They also were most pointed in asking us how do we plan on handling those plans that were not passed on to the state? How do we assure the community that they will not just be shelved? And I think everybody answered that question and was held accountable for that. And it was explained that we have not only gone on Channel 16, but we've gone on the public record, that as each curriculum review cycle comes forward and as each budget cycle comes forward, that it is inevitable that those plans be looked at, because it's greater than just a simple foundation by which we can guide ourselves, and that we wouldn't want to approach the future without some roadmap. So those guarantees were provided, and Dr. Bose left a seal of assurance that they would be carried out under his leadership. So again, they were not only the proper answer, they were the right answer. And Sandy, I thank you, and Dr. Bose, I thank you also.
Any other questions or comments on the long-range plan?
Yes.
Okay? Bill?
I just would like to publicly thank Sandy for all the hard work she did, the pushing of everyone, the prodding, the organizing. Not only did you do all that, you did it successfully, and I thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
And a report, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item M. M, other assignments. Any other assignments? Okay, I would just like to add a few things. Under other well, I'm just bringing it up under other assignments. When we get back to other business, under other business, I will ask the board to we'll try to get a consensus on when we'll be able to meet on bond resolution, okay? We'll do that under other business. And another, as Sandy just reported, that we do have a technology status report due for December 2nd. That's the night of reorganization. Also under other business, I would like to discuss with the board whether or not we really should entertain that discussion that night. I've had some conversation with Ken, some other board members. Are we ready for it or aren't? And I just want to make sure that we should do it that night. We may not do it that night. Again, I want to bring that up under other business, but I want to make sure that I brought that up now so you heard it, so the audience heard it, before we move into the audience of citizens. Okay? Does anybody else have any other assignments? If we don't, it is now time that we move into item number 3, to our audience of citizens. Okay, we had, we did have some people who have called or have written in ahead of time. I'd ask that our student rep, Terry, would come to the podium first.
Terry Rosenblatt, North Penn High School, Montgomery Township.
Christy Fretz, North Penn High School, Tomlinson Township.
I'd just like to start by thanking the board for recognizing the honor students this last week and the week before. It means a lot that you take your time out of the meetings to go and specially recognize individual students, and that was appreciated. On a not so pleasant note, in discussing the plans for an addition to North Penn High School, we, the Student Government Association, has developed a concern to the future state of the library, or the Instructional Materials Center. First are the proposed plans denying size expansion to the library. At its current size, the high school library has the capacity to hold 120 students, or approximately 4 classes. That number is only 3.5% of the projected population of the high school after expansion. This small number presents a large problem, not only when teachers want to bring their classes to the IMC, but also when students wish to do research independently. Also, it has been brought to our attention that as an alternative to the physical size expansion, it has been suggested that new CD-ROMs be added to the library as opposed to new books. This solution seems to be not viable to both the student body and the librarians for several reasons. Primarily, the fact is that there simply isn't an adequate level of technology in the IMC to support the infusion of CDs. As one librarian noted, There was a $3,000 upgrade to the Newsbank software in September. That still has yet to be used due to lack of proper drives. Also, with a 25-year-old wiring system in the library, there would need to be a complete electrical revamp in order to support any substantial upgrade. A final point is that the use of up-to-date tangible books is much more useful to students in the special education programs. It would be a difficult task for many special education students to learn how to use our advanced computers, much less read from one. While we appreciate the needs of the information generation, we must also remember that certain things, namely books, cannot be replaced or substituted. It is the sincere hope of the student body of North Penn High School that this board will reconsider their suggested plans and expand and update the library and its materials. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, also, Mrs. Bobby Penniman.
Mr. Clemens, I can only assume that your comments about keeping us to 3 minutes was directed at the request I made of you on Tuesday morning at about 8:30 by fax, in which I said, may I please have approximately 10 minutes to make a proposal to the board. I found that necessary for a couple of reasons. One, I want to present something of what I feel is some interest to the board and could be of some significant interest to the community at large. And two, as you might have noticed, I was here until approximately midnight at the last meeting. I turned into a pumpkin at midnight. I can't wait for an audience of citizens at that time. Now I've probably spent a minute and a half of my 3 minutes. So I'm going to forget making the proposal that I have labored over for several days, as some people here know, and I will probably communicate to you through the reporter. I don't have much alternative since it seems impossible to get your ear.
Ma'am, I'd be glad if you'd like to hand your report to Mr. Kenware, and he would be glad to photocopy and just
Actually,
board members later.
I do have a handout for you, but it is but a small portion of what I intended to discuss. I feel as though it needed some discussion. I also heard you say that if a person wanted to come back after having expended their 3 minutes, they could do so. If I were to make my proposal in 3 separate segments, I think you would find it so disjointed, unorganized, and unprofessional that I wouldn't have your ear anyway. Not that I did. Anyway. Yes. You will read it in the newspaper. You are also witness right now, everyone in this audience, to the birth of an activist. I have been attending the school board meetings for approximately 1 year. This is the 3rd time that I have stood at the podium. I had something very important to say tonight. I am very frustrated that no one had the courtesy to call me, although my request came in at approximately 8:30 Tuesday morning to this building to say that, I'm sorry, Ms. Penniman, you will not have 10 minutes to speak, even though you have requested it. I have been so frustrated with this board, but I have been studying the issues, feeling the pulse of the community, learning what needs to be learned by a relative newcomer to this community. I've been here for 5 years, almost 6 years. I have been studying and learning about this school board, how it operates, its dysfunctional nature, and what maybe needs to be done to correct some of the most serious issues that are facing this district. I come to you 2 days ahead of the meeting in a professional way saying, I want 10 minutes to make a proposal to the board, and this is denied to me at the onset of the meeting. I find this unacceptable. You are witnessing the birth of an activist. I guarantee this is not the last time you will see me at this podium. And I will no longer hesitate to speak out here or anywhere else to express my extreme dissatisfaction with this board. Forgetting, yes, I know that. Forgetting my proposal, my conclusion, I urge the board to not be short-sighted by selling the Keenest Road property. We know the money that would be generated by the sale of the Keenest Road property cannot be used in the general fund. It must be used to retire debt. We know that we will certainly sell the property to David Cutler, who will build houses on the property. This will further burden our system. We must not allow that to happen.
Ma'am, you may
Yes.
come back up to the podium.
I'm going to continue to speak. I have one paragraph left. Thank you. I wonder if you or the board is aware of this notice that came home with the report cards yesterday. Computer problems on November 19th made it impossible for us to complete accurate attendance figures in time to meet the report card distribution schedule. This incident simply underscores the urgency of addressing our technology issues. This time it was simple attendance information. Next time, what will it be? Payroll, senior class transcripts, class scheduling information, purchasing information, the costs of recovering a down computer,
Thank you, ma'am.
if it is even feasible, could be exorbitant. And those costs, plus hidden costs associated with a recovery, make the price of upgrades appear puny in comparison to the expenditures that need to be made now. Thank you.
Okay, I don't believe we had any other people write in. Who's next? Okay, thank you very much. This concludes our audience. Okay, Chuck.
Good evening, I'm Chuck Hammond from Montgomery Township. Quite honestly, I haven't been here for a while, as most of you know. Surprisingly, I haven't heard from any of you either, which is a little surprising also.
I've been calling, Chuck.
But I know that, Bill. Quite honestly, I guess I have a few comments to make. I have been watching most of the board sessions. Quite honestly, I think most of what I voted for has come to pass. I've seen you fight like little children at times, and I've also seen you do things in a very mature way. And overall, I guess I would probably give you a pretty much of a B+ since my last tenure at this podium. But I do have a very important issue I think that needs to be brought out, and that has to do with computer literacy and computer technology and the technology budget that you folks are playing around with. Quite honestly, in today's world, computer literacy is pretty much adequate for most people. In the not too distant future, computer proficiency is going to be mandatory. The children that you're pushing through the school systems today will have to be totally computer proficient. Everything in our world is going to be computers. There is going to be no more televisions. If you don't know things like what is a VAX or what is a network, then folks, you better learn. And if the people that are on your technology staff here don't teach you, then shame on them. It's time that perhaps, even if they were to produce pictures for the members of the board to realize what some of these things are, they're a must. You must get on board with this. If they tell you they need $100,000 for technology, pass it. You don't need to know the little bits and pieces of it. You don't they need a baud line or a T1 cable, or they need this or they need that. Give them the money, but make sure that Mr. Kelly earmarks it for exactly that. Don't go blowing it on a parking space somewhere or a garage or some grass, but spend the money in technology. Get these kids PCs, get their PCs working, and get these schools networked together. Get these children onto the thing where they can talk to the internet. They can go to any library anywhere in the world. They can talk to anybody in the world. They can learn what this world is all about through the internet. Don't be foolish. Spend the bucks and get it going now. Quit delaying it. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Heck from Hatfield Township. I would like to second what you just said about technology. $100,000, of course, is nothing. They have practically no facilities in this district for computer technology. My daughter is now a freshman at Slippery Rock University. She is expected to take notes over the internet. She is expected to take her grades, write her papers, all over the computer system. This is also true of many other students that I know in other universities. Our students are not prepared to do that when they leave North Penn High School. I also would like to second your comment about being careful about selling the Keenest Road property. Short-term gain, but if we need to build a second high school, when this board is gone, where will they get the land and at what cost then? We have seen an elementary program that has exceeded the population figures. I was there at the meeting when they passed the program. That high school was supposed to open in fall of 1997. This board and previous boards have stalled. Things are not being done. It's going to take time to get the bricks and the mortar and everything put up in place. The students are here now. I don't like the idea of the factory addition to the high school. It reminds me almost of a tenement building with very open-ended comments. Oh, we may do this, we may do that, but the only firm thing you said, we will not spend more than $18 million. I find that ludicrous and unbusinesslike to set a stage like that or a limit like that when so many other windows have not yet been opened or the light come in through them. So you know what you're going to do with the library, cafeteria, and other things. But my main purpose for being here tonight is to repeat, be careful about selling the property. We're going to see more houses. There are more developments going up and are being planned. And the students are already here. It's not a myth. Okay, thank you.
Margie Diazio, Montgomery Township. I have a question. I understand that there will be a long-term cost to the taxpayers if the Keenest Road property is sold and developed, and I was wondering if the board has done a cost analysis to see what the net effect this sale will have.
I'll let Mrs. Scher try to answer that as finance liaison.
Okay. I will say that there has been evaluation regarding the debt. There are also certain legal aspects that do come into play as far as whether or not in the future with the inflation of the property, if in fact, given what it was purchased from us to begin with, would actually increase in value. However, there are some restrictions as to whether or not we'd be able to benefit from that, and I believe that's an area that Mr. Bartle should address. And that is something that we are not out there in an open market with that piece of property, at least given the next 10-year, 12-year period of time. He'll explain why.
So you have not done an analysis to see what the long-term effect to the taxpayers will be?
We have evaluated. I have asked for information that deals with, given the fact that this is going to be a more exclusive type community from what's being proposed by Mr. Cutler. It will be homes in excess of $300,000. And from that, Mr. Kelly has evaluated what we would estimate to come in the books as far as transfer taxes, as far as tax dollars for those properties on an annual basis. We also have to consider that there was over $500,000 a year paid towards the debt service and interest of that property. And as a matter of fact, if we were to carry the debt...
Depending on the length of the loan. Only depending on the term of the loan, of the bond.
It's $500,000 a year to pay
And if
the
you
debt.
use a 10-year bond, then it's less.
It's $800,000.
No, it's $300,000.
Mr. Kelly, did you not say a 10-year bond would be over $800,000 a year for debt service and interest?
No, it's $800,000 in principal and interest.
Principal and interest, I mean.
In principal and interest, it's $800,000.
Thank you. And so, when I hear that there is no redeeming features as far as our budget is concerned, I believe it's important for the community to realize that as debt service we will carry, and the likelihood of us ever recovering that in the sale of the property is something that has to weigh very heavy on this board. It would create, you would need an extremely high inflation rate in order to ever recover those dollars of the sale of that property. We have the issue of another legal issue Mr. Bartle may or may not decide to answer to, is if we were to enter into a legal battle over holding the property without clear need. We've been experienced with that with the Knapp farm. The property was held for 10 years. We went through legal fees. We went through paying the interest on that property, and it was returned to the property owners back at the 10-year purchasing price. In the meantime, the property was off the tax rolls, and the taxpayers were funding the interest of that land. And it went back without a dollar gain for this community.
Well, I'd like to share.
But Mr. Clemens, I think the answer to the question is we have not done a financial impact.
That was my question.
The cost of the interest, the value of the property may even stay the same. The issue is the interest and the cost of educating the children that will come into this district. We have not done that analysis, and that is the answer to the question, because everything that you're speaking about is speculation at this point.
David, is
we do
what
not
you've
have
asked
that
for.
study in writing so the public can see what that
It is done to the best of our ability
It has not been done in
determine-
writing so the public can see what the expense of educating those children is in comparison to paying the interest on a bond with property that's being unused that could be resold at its value.
At what value?
If it's $6.5 million and it never goes up in value in 10 years, and we can sell it again for $6.5 million, that dollar would come back to us. The cost is the interest.
And the community would have paid over $10 million for that piece of property.
If you'd like, I can present you with some figures that I prepared with assumptions that would show you that it is more cost-effective to float the bond and pay the interest than it is to bring an average of 136 students into this district at our cost and finance the difference between local revenues and our cost of educating those children. Can we do this right now? I'd be happy to do it.
The
answer to the question is still no. We have not done that.
We have done it to the best of what is known versus what are
It's
assumptions.
not good enough.
And you're basing it on assumptions to which you do
Debate
not
my
know.
assumptions.
You don't know
Take some time to debate my assumptions, but let the public know
The
what the cost is.
phasing of this property is not going to be blossoming with 139 houses.
Who says?
And I would like Mr. Bartle to at least answer that.
Right, there is,
I know.
let's
I don't
get
wanna
back to
fight.
the actual, there is an answer to the legal, there's a legal answer, go ahead, Mr. Bartle.
Yes. The question that was raised by Mrs. Scher has to do with the right of the Cutler Group to repurchase this property in the event that we are going to decide to sell it. Now, as I've said to this board before, you have the right to sell the property under the law, and you have the right to keep the property under the law. And I've said that to you, I think, on at least a couple of other occasions with respect to this matter. However, if you opt to sell it, there are several ways that you are permitted to sell it under the school code. But before you can do that, you must offer it back to the Cutler Group for the price that you paid for it at the time that you took it. And that particular law can be cited at 26 Pertinent Statute, Section 1-410. If you decide that you are going to sell that property at any time within a 12-year period from the date of the condemnation, then the property must be first offered to the Cutler Group as the condemnee on the property. That's the law. And they of course, would pay you on a dollar-for-dollar basis. Now, there was a gentleman, I think, that appeared at one of the last meetings and asked what that meant. What that means is they will pay you the exact dollar figure. That is not adjusted for inflation. That is the option that they have. They have the first option to purchase the property at that price. That's the answer to the legal question. As far as the other matters, that's not legal advice, so I won't respond to those.
Frank, if I
Yes.
could ask, if I understood what you said, you said if we decide to sell it within 12 years of the condemnation, we must offer it to him. If we were to keep it beyond 12, then what is the legal requirement for selling?
If you were to keep it beyond the 12-year period, it's my opinion under the law that there would not be that first right of refusal, as I've indicated. In other words, then you would fall back to the general language of the school code that gives you your options as to how you sell real estate. And you would either do that by bid, you could do that by public auction, or you could do it with court approval at private sale. But there would not be a first option if you went beyond that 12-year period. The property was put to agricultural use, and that's why under the statute it's a 12-year period. So if you're beyond that period of time, Bill, then there is no first right or first option.
It could be sold at going market rate then?
Well,
You could get it.
Again, I mean, I'm the solicitor for the board.
Yeah.
I'm your legal advisor. I'm not going to speculate on what property values may be at that point in time. but your point is well taken, that it may be higher, it may be lower, depending on real estate values. We all know that we went through a period of time where real estate values went dramatically up. Real estate values are lower than they were perhaps in 1989 or 1990 in this area. Whether that turns around and it goes up or it goes down, your speculation is as good as mine.
Yep, thank you.
Ma'am, to best answer your question, a formal impact review from this board, to the best of my knowledge, has not been done. That does not mean, though, that board members like myself have not seen many different scenarios played out from different types of advisors on what may happen with that land if it does go back to Mr. Cutler. I cannot speak to all board members. I can certainly speak to myself, that I've spoken with different people who I believe advised me in a way that would certainly, in their best way, answer my question about how it could impact the district. I've done that. Has this board formally done that? I believe the answer to that is no.
Does Mr. Kelly have anything to add?
Dennis, would you like
You were checking into population. I
Yes,
asked you to
there's
check
been a
into
lot of
demographics.
discussion and conjecture about the number of students that would come from a development such as this. There's been a lot of problems with looking at projections, so what I did, I went to the development called
Montgomery Lake.
Gwinnett Lake, right off of Route 63 and around Stump Road, around that area.
Montgomery Lake.
It's a development similar, I think, to what Mr. Cutler is going to build over in Keenest Road.
That's right.
I checked with Montgomery Township, there are 88 homes there. I checked with our transportation department, we transport 46 students. That's an average, it's 52.3% of the homes. I know in many cases, everybody's been saying we're going to get 136 students, but from a development that is similar, it's a Cutler-built development, we're not going to get that. We'd still get, don't get me wrong, we'd still get 72 students, but we're not going to get the 136.
But, Mr. Kelly, that only is the students that we're doing today. It has no idea what's going to happen next year or the year after or the year after that. So it's a point in time that you're taking a measurement of.
Well, you have to take it at some point in time.
Because
Mr.
otherwise
Clemens, I'd be happy to present my assumptions on why I think. I mean, are we going to debate this right now? I'd love to do it.
If Mr. White has something that he would like to share with this board this evening.
I do?
I think that the proper time to do that would be when the issue of Keenest Road is presented for discussion.
So Mrs. Scherer is allowed to make statements, Mr. Kelly's allowed to make statements, but I should hold back and wait for the, when are we going to discuss it? Either we move and let the audience speak and let them have their say and get to the topic. Mr. Clemens, give me my opportunity right now.
I'd rather wait to give your opportunity when we are about ready to vote on
Then-
it. David,
then
I
disallow
believe,
the rest of the comments.
David, I erred, and I believe it is not a policy, but it's been a practice of this board, and it's been a practice of past boards, and during the audience of citizens, that I believe that this board talked about it and agreed that the president would do his best to answer a question, or the superintendent, and that we would rather that other board members would not comment. I apologize. I should have answered the question directly myself, and I will give you the opportunity at the time when we bring this to the table for the debate.
I know you will. It was just an issue of when. Thank you.
Well, I ask that you please do the right thing and vote against selling the Keenest Road property. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jim Gallagher from Hatfield Township. And I've been sitting here listening to people comment on the Keenest Road situation. And, you know, I'm not here to debate what you should do with it or new high school addition, all that kind of stuff. But it just seems to me to be a rather short-term solution to a potential long-term problem. I mean, land in this area is a precious commodity. And, you know, my opinion of the board here, you've been relatively conservative in your dealings with different situations over the years. So why not now? This is where I'm, you know, what your reasoning behind that is has not been fully communicated, I don't think, to the general public. What we read, what we hear at home in school associations, what our kids come home with. You know, over the last 10 years, I mean, our past performance here in the school district, we haven't done a good job of projecting where we're going to be. I mean, we build new schools. We have constant redistricting in some areas. Luckily, I haven't been affected by that, but many of my acquaintances have. And what I don't understand is how we can sit here today and say, we don't need that land. 10 years from now, we're done, we're set, forget about it. I mean, we have the capabilities to just leave options open. Any successful business, and I look at you people as running a business, the board of directors of a business. I mean, you need options, you need input from the people, from your clients. Your management style should encourage that. But what I hear is that we're going to make a decision now that could affect the education for a generation of kids. And I don't see that being brought up, I don't see that being discussed by the majority of the board. We're talking about inherent costs, projected costs. You don't really know those costs are accurate. You don't know the impact. How do you put a value on 9 years from now, 10 years from now? Uh-oh, we got a problem. What do we do? Your decisions today limits those future managers' options. Any successful board of any successful corporation, these are options open. What are we going to do if this doesn't work? What are we going to do? What do you do if you build the addition? And fine, if you want to build the addition, that's fine. I'm not here to debate that. But what I'm saying, what if? Does anybody on this board ask themselves, what if? That's all I'm saying. And I think that's all the people here are asking. What do you do if it doesn't work out? Forget all the finances, forget all this, who moves in, who goes where. I don't know. But what I'm saying is past performance indicates that we don't accurately know how to do that. If you did, 5, 6 years ago, when you designed these elementary schools, Bridle Path, Walton Farm, we wouldn't be doing the redistricting we're doing today, or that we've done over the last couple of years. I mean, if I was buying stock in this corporation, I would look at the past track record, past performance, the ability of these people to manage change. Manage change is not putting your head in the sand and say, this is it, my way or the highway. Work with the people, reach some kind of compromise and go forward. I think if you did that, you would have more support and say, okay, they're open-minded. Let's see what happens. Let's revisit it 5 years from now. Give those people, give that next group of kids, that next group of managers, whoever, managers, board directors, give them the opportunity to say, is this the right thing we're doing? And I think that's all the people are asking. And I don't think you can put a value on that. If you put a value on that, I think you're making a big mistake. Because that's impossible to calculate. I don't know anybody that can do that. That's all I have to say.
Joanne Orr, and I reside in Lansdale. How many of the 12 years of this contract have passed already? About 3? I don't know who this. How many years?
When was the condemnation done?
The actual transfer.
I think it was done in 93. 1993.
So you're
approximately 3 years.
12 minus 3, you're down to 9 years. Can't the district build anything on that can recoup the $500,000 a year that you're essentially losing and hold on to it? Take it down to 0, do something, make a few playing fields. I mean, I have an idea of building an indoor stadium that could house your marching band to host events and graduation and a lot of other activities and things, but can't you utilize enough of it to defray the $500,000?
It wouldn't be a revenue generator, though.
Pardon?
The answer to that could be yes, but that would be based on a lot of assumptions.
Okay. My second comment is I had gone up to the Tillmanson Township building and had gotten a layout of the Walton School. And Mr. Ryan, over the phone to me, had said there is potential for expansion at Walton, but probably due to politics, no one wants to approach Walton or Bridle Path because of the newity of the school, of the politics involved. Nobody wants to say you should have made it a little larger, but there is potential for expansion, at least at Walton. I didn't go over to Montgomery Township, but I know there's less acreage over there, but I still it has potential. If Dr. Bose brings up the population growths are in Montgomery and Tillmanson, that you should consider additions to those two. Thank you.
Linda Abram, Upper Gwynedd. I stayed last week until I could hardly stand it, and I had to go home. So you read my comments in the reporter. And you know how I feel about the addition to NAP and the modulars at Nash. I hope we have the vote tonight. I hope we can go with this. In my opinion, it is a Band-Aid, but we have to do something now. There is a lot of concern about redistricting. We all feel those pains. There is no other way we can do this but to move kids around. We are crowded in so many buildings. We just don't know what to do. When I hear about the issues of the Gwynedd Lee being evaluated, those are kids that go to my school. Many of those parents have preschoolers and babies in buggies. So there's lots of kids coming. So don't fool yourself about numbers that seem to be projected now. Because if David Cutler builds homes there, I don't care if they're $300,000 or $150,000, there's going to be kids coming, and we're going to have to find space for them. So the second part of this is to urge you to consider again the sale of Keenest. I guess my concern at the bottom line of all of this is the speed with which this was brought up last week and the speed with which we move on it tonight. I realize that there would be a further motion in reading this tonight to actually sell it. However, I do feel that the public deserves the right to hear more of an analysis, and I think we also need to debate further the use of that property over the long term. The gentleman earlier said it very eloquently. Our district is growing, and I think we need to look at how we could utilize that land. To sell it to pay off the debt is, in my opinion, is short-sighted, and I realize the debt is important. I understand that. But I also believe strongly that you have to put our children's needs first, and I don't ever hear that. I hear money all the time, and that concerns me greatly. The other thing I want to touch on is technology. I thank Mr. Hammond for his comments. And I guess I just have a question. When, Mr. Clemens, we are putting the recommendation in 5B, the recommendation for the resolution of that general obligation bond, Series 1996, we are moving that to other business tonight, as I understood you to say earlier. Is this, pardon my ignorance from the other evening, is this the 20-year bond that we were discussing, that you were discussing the other night? Okay.
This will be the 20-year bond, and I would say that technology or buses, as we talked earlier, would not even be included in this conversation.
Right. So that would be my question then. When will we be hearing tonight from the board, when we will be discussing, I believe the number was a 10-year, possibly a 10-year bond, to talk about the busing and the technology and a couple of other very important things that need to come up? When might we, as the audience, hear that?
My best guess at this point is that this board would be, I would hope, to be close to consensus by sometime January, early February, to move forward with some type of shorter-term bond for buses and technology. I'm going to, at risk, I'll ask anybody else to jump in, but I think that's about where we are. Anybody disagree with me?
Depends on technology presenting its report. That's the delay. What's the delay?
We are ready to get into the technology debate. I mean, I should say the board. I know that there's a consensus on the board. Let's get into it. Let's figure out how much we want to spend, and let's decide then on a shorter-term bond for that type of equipment, whether it be technology and buses or just technology or both.
So the reorganizational meeting in December, we were maybe thinking about hearing from technology. Did I hear earlier that possibly might be tabled now?
It might be tabled, yes, that's correct. We will discuss that under other business.
Okay. And if in January or February we were to be discussing a 10-year bond, when might action be taken by a technology committee, staff, what have you, to begin to implement some of the things that you would include in that? I mean, I don't understand that process, so I'm asking a rather basic question. How long does it take before we can do something? Is it months? Is it years?
I would think almost immediately.
Okay. So there could be immediate action on at least beginning to look at some of these needs that we have?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Unless anybody wants to beg to differ.
And the delay on the December presentation by technology is because they feel they need more time? Is that my understanding?
I've received some calls from some administrators. I've also received some calls from some board members, and that's why we need to have the discussion, is that maybe we might need another month before we're ready to really get into it.
Okay. I would hope that maybe that other month could not only buy us some maybe some really deep understanding of what the needs are, but then also when the report is given, that it would be comprehensive in nature enough that we could act upon it quickly. And I would urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Martha Whitworth from Talminson Township. First, I want to really second what Linda just said. I hope that the debate time on technology is very, very short and the action time is very, very fast, because we are so far behind. We're in the dark ages, as everyone knows, and it just keeps getting put back and put back and put back. I think we need to act on it as soon as possible. My second comment has to do with a combination between Canis Road and building the addition on Knapp and Nash. First, I strongly support that. We absolutely need those classrooms. However, it seems to me again that it's a Band-Aid way of planning, because I heard you say that if we sell Canis Road, it's possible that the settlement could come in July. If we sell it, we're going to sell it to Mr. Cutler. That means Mr. Cutler's going to have houses up by January or February on that property, I'm guessing, which means in the middle of next year, we're going to have, my guess is closer to 150 new students, but even if it's 130 new students, that's 5, 6, 7 new classrooms full of students, but we're only adding enough for the students that we already have. So already by January, February of next year, you're not going to have enough room for the students. So why don't you make that addition bigger now or do something different? Because in 1 year, it's already going to be too small again, it seems to me. So I'd just like you to consider that in your plan. From July to January, I live in Talminson Township, and every day I walk out of my house, there's a new house that went up that wasn't there the day before. So they go up pretty quickly, believe me. Yeah, I think they can get them up very quickly when they want to. The only other thing that I have is if we're adding 10 to 12 new classrooms next year and the following year, which I strongly support, I would like to see you tonight make a commitment to put teachers in those classrooms, make a commitment to staff those classrooms. Won't do any good if we have new classrooms if we have no faculty to put in them. And when people requested a lot of new teachers, 8 or whatever it was, this year, and we only got 2, it didn't do any good because we couldn't open up additional rooms. So please make a commitment to put staff in those rooms as you decide to build those classrooms. Thank you.
Hi, Bob Graziano from Talminson. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but some of the comments I decided to. Number one, we're not in the real estate business. We're in the education business. A majority of you promised a solution to our enrollment problem, and you're delivering on that solution. There really is no need for the Canis Road property. Number two, the last PEL study that you commissioned showed an average of 2.45 family members per household. That number is very close to what Mr. Kelly found just in his very small sample. So I don't think we should expect 136. It should be far less than that. Number three, typically in this district, 20 to 25% of the kids go to private school, not public school. So maybe after all of this, we're talking maybe 40 kids of school age going to our district, the equivalent of not even 2 classrooms. And finally, if somebody wants to come into this district because they want their kids to be educated here, whether the Canis Road property is open land or it's houses, they're going to come into this district, whether it's Talminson or Hatfield or Lansdale, Montgomery, they're still going to come into this district. So I think many of the arguments made for keeping the property just don't make any sense, and I think selling it would be the wise thing to do. Thank you.
Gary Robinson, Hatfield Township. I too had not planned on speaking tonight, but I continue to hear misrepresentations in the public about the conditions of the real estate. And if it happens there, you can best be sure it also happens with the curriculum in other areas. First of all, the property, the whole tract was not taken by condemnation. As I understand from the official records, although the board at that time had voted and passed a resolution to take condemnation, no condemnation was ever filed in the county. The property was never owned by Cutler. Charles Hull and the Hull family, Charles and Emma Hull, owned the property. They received $4 million. Cutler, for his so-called equitable interest, received $2 million. If you are now talking about returning the property to Cutler, first of all, he never owned it, so you couldn't be returning it to him. And if it's dollar for dollar, is this district going to get $6 million or is it going to get $2 million? Which brings you back to the inflated appraisal that the sale price was based on. The $6 million appraisal was based on the tract actually being developed with streets, utilities in place, gas, electric, water. Since that never happened, the property was bought by the district as an agricultural tract whose real value was only $1 million. I think the public needs to get some straight answers from the public officials.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Chuck, sure.
First, Tom, let me apologize, because if I had said nothing, we would have been way ahead in this board meeting. And before, when everybody cheered for me, watch the reaction now. Sell Keenest Road. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. This concludes our audience of citizens. All right. Before we move on, I just would like to comment. I just have talked with our board solicitor, and I will ask our solicitor to comment further on the on item 5D under the Keenest Road tract. I would just ask him to expand upon what is in the motion, but also to shed some light on really where we were and where we are today. So I'd ask Frank at that time that you would bring us up to date.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
You may have a different audience then. I think that a response closest to the time of the
Okay.
question being raised
Okay.
is much more efficient for
Okay.
the community's understanding.
Point well taken. I'll agree with that. Frank, would you like to try to just bring our audience up to date?
Yes. With respect to the second to last gentleman that spoke, I believe Mr. Robinson, he raised several issues concerning the Keenest Road site. His recollection of the condemnation resolution passed by this board and the fact that there was no formal condemnation filed in the Court of Common Pleas of Montgomery County, and also the legal title owner at the time being the Halls, and the equitable owner pursuant to an agreement of sale being the Cutler Group, is accurate. What he stated in terms of each of those is accurate. However, I think I should comment with respect to the conclusions. First of all, it is clear that this board is a condemnor pursuant to the statute. There's no question that this property was taken as the board passed a resolution, and therefore the property was taken as a result of the condemnation. In fact, the agreements of sale that were done with the North Penn School District and both the Cutler Group and also the Hall family were titled as an agreement of sale in lieu of condemnation. Therefore, it is my opinion, has been my opinion, that this board did acquire those properties through the condemnation process, and I think under the law that's quite clear. That being the case, I have said that this board being a condemnor, as that term is defined in the statute, and the Cutler Group being the condemnee, as that term is defined in the statute, they have the rights pursuant to that section of the law. Now, I also believe that I mentioned in the last meeting of this board that in an abundance of caution, that we should also obtain a release from the Hall family with respect to their rights under this statute. Obviously, the Hall family was to receive a certain consideration for the property because Mr. Cutler or his group was going to buy it and they were going to construct homes, and therefore the market value that was placed upon this was done so in contemplation of that. When it comes to the issue of what compensation will be paid to this district, I think we should be quite clear with respect to that. The compensation that will be paid to this district under the first option is that a dollar-for-dollar amount would have to be reimbursed to this board. As I totaled those specific numbers, the raw ground cost was based on $42,500 for 133 lots, plus $180,000 amount for the 134th lot. I assume that that was the farmhouse. That totals $5,832,500. In addition to that, the board also had certain other connections, had 70 sewer connections or equivalent dwelling units at $6,200 each for a total of $434,000. So we're talking about the $6.2 million number. We are not talking about $1 million number, nor are we talking about a $2 or a $4 million number, whatever numbers happen to be mentioned. With respect to the consideration that was paid by this board at the time that the property was taken by agreement in lieu of condemnation some 3+ years ago, I'll just comment on that briefly. Obviously, I was not the solicitor for the district at that time, but generally speaking, when property is condemned or taken by eminent domain, there are essentially two issues. One is a public use, and the other is the just compensation. The public use was without question. It was contemplated to be a school building. The question is just compensation. What was that real estate worth at its highest and best use? At that point in time, it was currently undergoing a subdivision in Montgomery Township. Therefore, it is clear to me that the appropriate number to be placed on that in terms of an appraisal would be the property's use as a 134-lot subdivision. Now, we can quibble back and forth, and appraisal is an art, not a science, and people may decide that there was too much or too little paid for the property, or whatever the case may be. But the correct appraisal figure is based on a 134-lot subdivision, not based on a farm. So it was the appropriate way of analyzing it at that time, and I think I've given you some indication at this time as to what the appropriate numbers are that we would be looking for in return for that option.
Thank you, Mr. Close. Thank you, Mr. Bartle. Okay, before we move on to our superintendent's report, I would like to comment and ask that everyone would notice the change in our agenda. I do believe that it is streamlined, and I do thank Dr. Bose for working on that. It is our first attempt at streamlining the agenda, and I'd ask that all board members... Dr. Miller? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Miller. Sorry about that. It looks good, and I think it's going to work. I hope it's going to work, and I think we're off to a real good start in the streamlining process. I know that there were requests from board members. How can we make this easy to understand? And I apologize to Dr. Miller for not recognizing her first. At this time, I'll turn over our meeting to Dr. Bose.
Thank you, President Clemens. I would like to streamline a recommendation that you've been anticipating for some time, and recommend that you approve the appointment of Dr. Robert Hassler as Assistant Superintendent of Schools for a 3-year commission at an annual salary of $96,000 effective January 13. And for those who would ask naturally, who is Dr. Hassler, let me just take a few moments to highlight his career. He has an undergraduate degree from Muhlenberg College in accounting and economics. He has an education degree, a master's degree, and a doctoral degree in school administration from Lehigh University. He's been an elementary teacher, an elementary principal, a director of curriculum instruction, an assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, and he's now serving as the interim superintendent of Northampton Area School District in Northampton, Pennsylvania. So he comes to us with a lot of experience in curriculum instruction, exactly the job that we wish him to occupy, and I am pleased to recommend his appointment to this Board of Education.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Krieger, second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments on item 4A?
Only for clarification, the 3-year commission, is that That does not involve a contract, as I understand.
No.
And just
But
for the clarity of the community,
It's a
that
commission.
they hear that and they think,
It's an oath, so he becomes commission officer.
fine, I just think that word needs to be clarified, they may interpret it differently. Thank you.
More questions or comments?
Mr. President, just a request that should, once Dr. Hassler is here, if there's any change in the reorganization chart as to who answers to who and the level of accountability among the current cabinet members and fellow administrators, and I'd like to see the change in that reorganization chart provided to the board. Thank you.
More questions or comments? Okay, call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The next recommendation, I understand, is subject to a different proposal from the board, and at this time, Mr. Clemens, I'll yield to whoever board member wants to make that.
I'll turn it over to Don Hill. Before I turn it over to Don Hill, I need to say that up until yesterday, I was under the impression that we would be, that there were perhaps 5 board members that would support item 4B. Yesterday, there were many phone calls. There were phone calls from at least 5, if not 6 board members that I received in regards to this motion. And after much discussion on this motion, amongst different board members at different times, Don Hill had suggested to me that he would like to amend the original motion. At this point, I'll turn it over to Don.
Thank you. I'm in scary waters again. When the need for the additional space for the elementary students came before the board, there was much dialogue and much discussion regarding that, and much debate about the numbers and the escalation, the changes, and so forth. And that number battle continues as we move forward, and will always continue, because a lot of it is an art and not a science. And so my first inclination was, when we needed additional space, that the easiest way to do that would be to add the 16 modulars as proposed to the different schools to meet the immediate need for the additional classrooms. After my first opinion on that, I and other board members took a look at the Knapp School. The Knapp School is totally inadequate to add any more students in there. That school was added onto it before. The core facilities were never upgraded, and so it would be not possible or reasonably possible to add additional modulars or classrooms to that school unless the core facilities was upgraded to handle even the students it has now and the future students that we may add through additions or modular addition. My other concern was that if we went solely with the 16 modulars at one time, would that saturate the district where modulars could be added, and there could be no possible addition if we're guessing wrong and we need more room. So the motion that I'm about to make is a compromise of all of those different issues. My viewpoint has changed a number of times. I know other board members' viewpoints have changed a number of times. We're trying to do the best option that we can to add as many classrooms as we can as quickly as possible, and also give us some movement that if our guesses are wrong or things are wrong, that we can also move ahead. Based upon that preamble, let me read and recommend a motion. I recommend approval to proceed with plans to improve the core facilities at the Knapp Elementary School. Completion to be completed by September of '98, and to appropriate funds for 16 modular classrooms. 8 of these modular classrooms will be for use, if possible, in September 1997, 4 at Inglewood, 2 at Montgomery, and 2 at Nash. That solves our Tolmanson and some of our, and Montgomery, and helps relieve in some of that wear immediately to get the modulars in there. The remaining 8 modular classrooms purchased to proceed following analysis of the 10th day enrollment in September 1998. If in September of 1998 we need to make some changes, then or modifications, we can do that. But it's in plan now for those. Let me read it again because I made some other comments. Let me read that paragraph as it's written. The remaining 8 modular classrooms purchased to proceed following analysis of the 10th day enrollment in September 98 will be used at the Knapp Elementary School, because by then we'll have the core facilities able to handle it. Funds to be appropriated for this in the bond issue to be authorized. I make this as a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion's been made and there's a second on the motion. Questions or comments on the motion, or perhaps a one more time reread of the motion?
Right.
All right, I'll read it this time without any added words. Recommend approval to proceed with plans to improve the core facilities at the Knapp Elementary School. Completion by September of 1998, and to appropriate funds for 16 modular classrooms. 8 of these modular classrooms will be for use in September of 1997. 4 at Inglewood, 2 at Montgomery, and 2 at Nash. The remaining 8 modular classrooms purchased to proceed following analysis of the 10th day enrollment in September of 1998 will be used at the Knapp Elementary School. Funds to be appropriated in the bond issue for these items.
Okay, and your second stands, correct, Sharice? Okay, there's been a motion made, there's been a second. Questions or comments? Mrs. Scher.
It's very specific with the placement of modulars, and it's a very extended motion. I'd just like to suggest that a period be made after the funding for 16 modulars. The rest of that falls into administrative recommendations as they decide. I mean, I know that we know our schools and we know where the modulars our capabilities are, but do we really want to be so specific that we've designated that 2 at Montgomery is necessarily at this point in time where we would best be placing them versus those other potential sites? Or do we need that? Because that's that is something that doesn't necessarily have to drive through a motion or a vote, as long as the funding is provided for 16 modulars to be designated, unless Mr. Hill has a specific reason in outlining those sites.
I do.
Okay.
I think it's necessary because we need direction to go to those townships to get approved. Right. So we have to designate where we're going to put them.
If there's an absolute need to be specific or
I mean, we would like to, if we're going to accomplish this by the opening of school in September, we need to move immediately with our municipalities. So I almost need a direction as to where we're placing.
Okay, and you need them specific to that. That's fine.
Not just the ones we want to do for 1997.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my position was clear at the last committee meeting. I believe that there's a recognition of needs for repairs and renovations and upgrades at Knapp. However, I do believe in the best interest of this community that the modulars put space where many of the student needs are and creates the least disruption for the community. So I have no difficulties with the overall motion and recommendation, but I didn't know if it was specific that we had to draft.
Knowing I can begin discussions with Tolmanson and Lansdale Borough, because they're the 2 municipalities that I'm dealing with.
And this is what you would recommend for this upcoming year?
2 Knapp, 2 Montgomery, and 4 Inglewood. Excuse me, it's not, actually I need to talk to Montgomery and Tolmanson.
That's what I meant.
For the...
Okay, because I was going to say Knapp was 4 originally, I didn't know.
Knapp will be the discussion with Lansdale Borough.
That's fine.
Will be made to the
If
board.
there was need for such an extensive motion, that's fine. As a matter of the overall spirit of the motion, I totally agree.
If we keep that as part of the motion, then that's the direction Mr. Wood needs. Am I correct? That's correct.
Fine.
More questions or comments? Maybe we just want to go over. Let's stay on this side. John? Don made the motion. Come over here, Donna.
Yes, President Clemens, I guess as I look at this, what is being referred to as a compromise, I think it's the best of both ideas. I guess where I felt sold on this as an idea is parents have hit on three areas: redistricting and the concerns that come with redistricting, the need for more space, and the need for that space to be quick. Under the plan for the Hart addition, there was only going to be 2 modulars next year at Nash, and then we have to wait a whole nother year to get the NAP building up, and hopefully that stays on schedule and it doesn't end up like Penndale. In this plan, there's going to be 8 next year. That's square footage, that's quicker, and it sets a commitment and direction that I would hope that parents can take some trust in. I also want to add that I think that this will reduce some of the redistricting burdens under that former plan. On personal comments, Art Wood, I know that you've taken many people through the building, NAP, over the week, and though I wasn't one of them because I'm familiar with the building, I think that's the kind of extra effort sometimes the administration has to put out to make board members feel more comfortable with their changes and their decisions, because these are not easy decisions and these aren't easy times. So I know that you've done that, and I thank you for that, even though I wasn't a beneficiary. I thank the board members that kept calling and calling and calling and weren't content with 5 votes. A 5-4 vote on this board on any given issue doesn't give confidence to ourselves or to the community. And to see the board really try to hammer out more than 5 votes on a plan like this is admirable. And for all those people that called around and contacted me and heard me out, I thank you, and Don, particularly yourself, dealing with this in the last days. And Mrs. Abrams, I read your letter. It was a very good letter. It was quite convicting, and I heard you mention it tonight, and I want you to know that that was a good letter. And those thoughts were with me as I tried to contemplate this decision tonight. Thank you, Mr. President.
Keep going right around. Questions, comments? Sharice?
I just have a couple questions about the expanding of the core facilities at NAP. There is an intention on this board's part to eventually place modulars at that school as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
With this motion, I believe that is correct.
Phase 2.
Did I hear modulars at NAP, or did I write the wrong school down?
No. Modulars at NAP, after the core facility is done, we may place all 8 there.
Okay, thank you.
18 seconds on?
Pardon me?
There were replacements for 16 modulars under the facilities committee plan. And now you're talking that instead of
Still 16.
It's 16, but they're broken down differently.
The only difference is, and we can look at that again in 1998. We're building the core facility so they could handle all 8 modulars, and that's a place to go. The original plan had some going at North Wales. North Wales does not have a need for the modulars at this time in May of '99. We can always debate whether those other 8 go. That's why the motion is read. We can make analysis in September of '98, but the core facilities will allow us to put 8 at least at NAP without having to affect another school like North Wales.
Well, of course it will if you decide to renovate the facilities to accommodate that many students.
That's part of the motion.
As opposed to 4. So you're going to draw up the construction.
Sharice, you clear?
Yes.
Bill?
Well, I guess my first is just a little bit of venting. I knew nothing about this, just so everybody knows. I had no idea there was a change pending. Which I find ironic, since I'm supposed to be the elementary education liaison person. If you're not going to ask me, at least tell me. Before we come to a meeting, you're asking me to forget everything we've talked about, all the previous work sessions, and throw something new. And it seems like what we're doing is doing the things that we're talking about and not being the right things as far as dealing with numerous municipalities. And I'm not prepared to vote. I'm sorry, I'm just too surprised by it.
Bill,
I'm disappointed that nobody told me.
All I can tell you is up until the last hour, I think the vote that we just, a vote that did not go through, a police contract vote of last month, I thought that there were enough votes as for this item 2 up until the last hour. It changed, and as president, I was on the phone all afternoon back and forth as to what was going on, trying to understand what was going on, and I apologize.
I'm not blaming you personally, but I don't know who to blame, if anybody. But go ahead and do what you want to do.
David?
I also resent the fact that we had discussed in a work session the plans that we would do to try to alleviate our elementary school population problems. The public had a chance to speak to the issue at that time. Consensus that to bring a motion forward onto this agenda in an action meeting where the actions were previously discussed should have occurred. This occurs at the last moment. The public has no opportunity to comment on the changes.
Right.
I appreciate Mr. Hill's trying to come up with a compromise solution, but that solution was not discussed in a way that would allow public comment. And I too am unprepared to vote for this tonight because I have no information on the impact of where these modulars would go on the population, and I don't believe we should be voting on this changed resolution this evening.
No comment, Mr. President.
Oh, yeah, right.
I have a comment. I planned to vote on the recommendation as it was written, or as it is written. I stated that at the work session. Again, I just stated that up until the last hour. Probably all yesterday afternoon and all this afternoon I was on back and forth, not initiating calls, but receiving calls from different board members. And at the last hour, I realized that there were perhaps not 5 votes to move forward item 4B as it was written. I did not pull it from the agenda. As I noted earlier, I did pull item 5B, but I did not pull item 4B because I had a long discussion with Don Hill about it this afternoon, and Don informed me that he planned to read an amended motion that would state, as it did state, that it would include the renovations to the core facilities at NAP as stated in the original motion, but that there were some few minor modifications. I'm a believer more in bricks and mortar, and I believe a full-blown addition at NAP, not modulars but classrooms, would be a better solution. But in order to move forward and to get accommodations for our students that are coming, I'm willing to compromise tonight and go with this this altered or amended motion so we can keep moving forward. We've made some assumptions that Mr. Wood can just immediately move forward with townships. And from previous experience on township boards, I know what townships work like. And sometimes it's very difficult to move forward with plans. So therefore, in order to give Mr. Wood the direction as quickly as possible, I am prepared to vote tonight and will vote tonight to get this thing, to get something moving. So I will support it, and that concludes my remarks.
Mr. Clemens.
I will try to clarify what the motion says so I understand it in my words. Basically, the motion says, I'll say it one more time again so I understand it. At NAP, we're going to do all the core improvements as was drawn up by Art, except we won't add the classroom wing, but the expansion of the cafeteria and the I call it the auditorium, the multi-purpose room, the core facilities, including boilers, things such as that, we will upgrade those. And the library, correct. Correct. We will all, it's my turn, okay, folks? I give you guys time, it's my turn, okay? That's all we'll do at NAP. We'll put 2 modulars at Nash. We will put 4 modulars at Inglewood, and we will put 2 modulars at Montgomery. So it totals 8 modulars as soon as possible. Now we're making an assumption that Art can get the clearance from the townships to possibly have 8 in place for September of '97. I think we're being very optimistic. Let's hope that he can get it done, but I'm not going to count on 8 because I know how long it takes to get through the process. Let's hope for the best, and certainly I know Art will do his best, but to the best of my knowledge, in my own terms, that's how the new motion reads. Am I, Mr. Hill, is that correct?
That is correct.
And just to add, there will also be direction for 8 more modulars with the intent that they will probably end up at NAP.
Probably, but we make that this final decision in 98.
Okay. Ms. Nagel.
Yes, Mr. Wood, under the former motion where there would be a hard addition to NAP, did you have to go through an Act 34 hearing for that?
I had not calculated what the total percentage of the building that we were changing.
Okay.
And that's what would determine whether or not we would go through an Act 34.
And surely, am I correct in assuming that an Act 34 hearing would take this community far more time than going to local municipalities for modulars?
Well, it would, and we still need, and that's why I have a comfort level starting now with the NAP upgrade. We will still look for reimbursement, so it's still going to involve plan cons, which will still take us through a longer process.
Okay. President Clemens, I'd also suggest that to help the situation move as expeditiously as possible and that it be finessed properly, that Art would have the services, direct services of Solicitor Bartles to make sure that these things happen as quickly and as smoothly as possible in dealing with these municipalities.
I talked with Art yesterday. I don't know if the board wants to entertain a motion under other business, but I believe Art would like direction from this board. I know he has an architect in mind, but I believe yesterday you told me, Art, that you would like to get direction working with an architect.
I would request that on December 2, and I will probably do an RFP, or at least come back with some cost data, but our 45 modulars currently have been done by Mr. Warmcastle, and you know, he just happens to be an expert in the area of modulars, so we will look toward him, but we will get some other quotes. Interestingly enough, and I have a conflict on the 2nd, I will be reviewing with the Planning Commission the addition of the high school at Tolmenson, so I don't know how I'm going to be at both places, but we'll certainly work that out somehow.
Okay, more questions or comments?
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
And just so Bill knows, I obviously communication here is a little different. The bond, as it was discussed with me, was basically to allow for a review of what facility upgrades to NAP would be in light, if in fact the decision was made to the contrary of how that was being presented to us originally. At this point, it seems to me that one's going to drive the other, and quite frankly, future discussion becomes a moot point if in fact one is so closely articulated that there is no options in that bond. So maybe you may need to reconsider.
More questions or comments?
Just want to
David.
Just want to understand, Mr. Wood, if you'd refresh my memory, the cost of the renovations to the core facilities at NAP were what portion of the $4 million that we're going to go into that?
Using a cost per square foot and dropping out 12 classrooms, lavatories, corridors, and a centrum, it brings us back to about $2.3 million to do the core facilities, the upgrades, as proposed without the 12 classrooms, if you will.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're back to the proposal, the 16 modulars plus a $2 million renovation of one of our elementary schools that so far is doing okay without that particular core renovation because we're not expanding any classroom space. But everybody's ready to commit to that at this point. Just want to make sure of that. Thank you.
My understanding is that there has to be work done in that school, isn't it, Mr. Wood?
It would have to be done if we were going to add more classrooms.
No, I was told that
Not for 4 modules.
No, I've seen that. Like, this heating system still has to be replaced.
Heating system is a problem, but other than that, we had agreed that we could add 4 modulars to the existing facility.
Tom, can I call for the
We're not
question?
doing that?
Sure. I think, sure. Mr. Hill's called for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
One no,
Okay.
one abstention.
believe 7 ayes, I believe 1 nay, and I believe 1 abstention.
And about 50 everyone. I can't believe you're doing it.
I find it incredible that the agenda was changed tonight to include the audience of citizens before the voting, knowing full well that an extraordinarily controversial issue would be brought up.
Ma'am, you're out of order.
I know I'm out of order. You're out of order by having more behind-the-scenes, backdoor manipulations occurring that are contrary to anything that has been discussed in public. This is totally outrageous. Call the police. You don't have a following, Mr. Clemens.
While we were in recess, our board solicitor was kind enough to point out to me and to be sure that I was clear and understood what this board just did vote on. And what this board did vote on was the call for the question. We have not yet voted on the actual motion that has been made by Mr. Dondell, seconded by Mr. Sharice Krieger. And I'd like any comments from board members on that. As Robert's rules, he was very clear, and I thank him for that, was in proper following of Robert's rules. And again, we use Robert's rules as a guideline, but in using Robert's rules, that when you call for the question, we do need a vote, and we need a 2/3 vote when you call for the question. And I thank him. Do you want to expand upon that anymore, Mr. Solicitor?
No, that's exactly right. But once you pass the motion to call the question, the next matter of business is the question itself. And that's Mr. Hill's motion, seconded by, I guess, Mrs. Krieger. So at this point in time, you should vote on the main motion, which is that which has been discussed by Mr. Hill and others.
Any other questions on that? Because I have another announcement before we do that.
No, you called the question.
You can't call for
Excuse
it.
me. Okay, but I want to make, no more debate from the board, but I've talked to a couple board members, and to try to keep some peace, I'm try to be a peace, I get accused of not being, but I'm going to try to be a peacemaker. I think that I am. I'm willing to open this up to the audience of citizens from now until 5 of 10. For 15 minutes, no more, to state your case. You've heard the motion. I would rather no rumblings from the board. I will open it up for no more than 15 minutes. I'll ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes and just make comments. It's not time for questions or debate, but again, an attempt to make some peace. I'll open it up to audience of citizens.
Linda Abram, Upper Gwinnett. My comment is frustration. I do not understand, so I'm going to try and be rational. I do not understand, and I would appreciate an explanation, as to how the modulars proposed, 4 at Inglewood, 2 at Montgomery, and 2 at Nash, are going to alleviate the overcrowded classroom situations per the handout that was given of a week or 2 ago, of which I don't have, but someone in the audience does have. For instance, my school has an overcrowded situation next year and more immediately the following year. Gwynn Nor is not on here at all. I understand that. It never has been considered for modulars. We can't take any more. But Inglewood doesn't have any overcrowded classrooms. So are you saying that you're adding 4 modulars and we're going to redistrict and move lots of kids around so that we get these overcrowded, exceeded class size guideline classrooms back in order? I'm thoroughly confused. Please, somebody help me, because I think that's why we're all frustrated. I do not understand. I'm willing to compromise. I think we all are. But please help me understand how this immediate 1997 action is going to help those numbers that were printed by this administration not more than 2 weeks ago. Can anybody answer that? Or are you not interested in answering? That's my frustration. Okay? You're saying that if we have 10th day numbers in 1998, we'll add 8 modulars at Knapp. You know, these modulars have been at Gwynn North for a number of years. They were supposed to be temporary. They're now very permanent. They're comfortable. The kids love them. They're air conditioned. It's great. Is this the way we want to go in this district, is throw up Band-Aids when we feel that we can't add that permanent structure to Knapp? That's a school that is prime for improvement and prime for growth. It's in an area that could be redistricted, and I know no one wants to hear that. My parents are screaming at me. They don't want to come. They don't want to go. But this has got to happen. How are you fitting these kids? I don't understand. Can somebody answer me?
The only thing I can correct you on is there is overcrowding in Englewood.
Well, the numbers, I don't know. I don't have the sheet in front of me. There were no X's and circles on those numbers from Dr. Bose. There's 2? Okay, but there's 4 modulars going up there, okay? And there's only 2 classrooms, 2 grades, I guess I should say. 1 grade, okay? So 4 modulars, 1 grade. So where are the kids going to go in those? So they're going to have low class size then? Englewood's going to have a great situation. Okay. Well, I think we need to answer these questions before we take action like something like this. It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I have to leave. It doesn't make sense.
My name is Eleanor O'Cotney. I live in Montgomery Township. I do have the handout from the last time. There are 2 overcrowded classrooms in the 5th grade at Englewood. The numbers below the 5th grade at Englewood are significantly smaller than many, many, many of the other schools on this list. You have Bridle Path that has a total of 4, 8, 12, 15 classes at or above the guidelines. Gwynn North has a total here of 11. I don't see any proposal to do anything for Bridle Path, to do anything for Gwynn North. Those are only 2 of the schools here on this list, and there are many others. I don't understand how you can decide to put 4 classrooms on Englewood, and if Mrs. Mengel is correct, and their proposal here is that these classrooms will eliminate the need for massive redistricting, I cannot understand how that will work. You're going to have to do major redistricting, and I think you should think about this before you take a vote on this issue. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Martha Whitworth. I'm really frustrated with the process that you did. All of us came here and saw on the agenda one proposal, then at the last minute you switch it after the audience of citizens. I think you need to have a board policy that that's not going to happen. If there's going to be a different proposal, then we need a chance to talk about it and think about it. Also, I find it unbelievable that a decision like this, which is affecting the lives of hundreds and hundreds of children for generations, was made in 3 hours this afternoon by phone calls. That's like unbelievable to me. And the other thing that I'm really having trouble with is when Mr. Hill said in September of 1998, after the 10th day enrollments, we're going to decide if we need more modules. What are we going to do with those children meanwhile? Are they going to be out in the playgrounds? I mean, we can't decide after the 10th day enrollment that we need more modulars then. So I think it's a very ill-conceived motion, and I think you need to think it through before you, but most of all, you need to let us talk and have time to think about it before you bring it up.
I'm Judith Thomas from Hatfield Township. I think we all know the old joke that talk is cheap, except when you are talking to a lawyer. And I would add that, and also except when you are talking to the North Penn School Board, because for the last 2 years we have been gathering together and throwing around numbers, millions of dollars. 2 years ago, we were real close to building the second high school, the big one. I'm saying all these words which make some people's hair stand up all together, just by hearing this expression, the second high school. The original, bigger version of the second high school indeed addressed the very problem we are facing now. It was the old school board, the bad one. Dr. Persing, he was telling all of us that we would not have to face the elementary education enrollment problem what we are facing now. What are we doing now? Piecemealing it, $6 million here, $23 million there. We are going to reach that original $41 million number, if you add it up, we just don't see it all together on paper, and we are just still talking about it. Nothing happened in the last 2 years. We are sitting here and talking, and that's wrong. And now I see only one reason why anybody would want to sell that piece of land where the high school still can be built, to make damn sure that it's not going to happen. And it will make some people happy, but it's not going to help the children. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chuck Hammond again. One thing I think you were definitely wrong in not involving Mr. Allen in this decision. No question about that. But I do definitely approve of the modulars for the simple reason that modulars will move. If you need them at another school, they will move. You can move them. If you permanently add on to Knapp School, it's there. If you need or you have overcrowding in another district, you wind up busing the children to the Knapp School. You wind up redistricting to fill up Knapp School. But you can move the modulars to another school, I believe, if you can do that. Is that correct, Mr. Wood?
We have moved them.
You betcha. Also, the children like them, they're air-conditioned, they're functional. You can have them a lot sooner. You're out of space. We've been playing with this issue again for years. It'll take you a couple of years to add on to Knapp. Get the modulars now. If the one elementary school is the wrong place for it, then find the place where it should be, but get the modulars. Again, it's the same thing as technology. Quit playing, approve it, and quit fighting like little children. Let's get on with it.
More questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Back to the motion on the table. I'll open it back up to the board for questions. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I can't. Call for the question.
No,
Call for
at
the
this
vote.
point, you want to vote on the main motion.
Okay, anybody need it read one more time? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain. 7 ayes, 2 abstentions. Motion carries. Dr. Bose.
I don't think this will be nearly as exciting. It's a follow-up, as the board will remember, 6 days ago, you received from me a reminder of what the October 8th presentation on the Language Arts Review brought to you. The presenters called Phase 1 and requested your acceptance of Phase 1 so they can continue into Phase 2, building on Phase 1, knowing that you accepted Phase 1. So I recommend you vote to accept Phase 1.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Engel, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Questions or comments? Questions?
Mr. Clemens, one question to Dr. Bose in regards to the motion on the floor this evening. This issue was brought to the board last month, and the board received an in-depth report from Dr. Terozzi and Dr. Cahill. Also, in the explanation in the board's packet last week, item number 2 under the recommendation, and I will read it. It discusses what was discussed with us last month, in particular the major goals for 95 and 96. However, relevant to those goals, there was numerous information that was asked by members of the board to specify exactly what the intent was for planning for the piloting. It is my understanding, after visiting numerous classrooms that are participating in the piloting program already, that those plans have been already initiated. So what exactly would an approval of this Phase 1 do in relationship for the planning of the piloting program? I'm a little lost on that. If it's already in the classrooms and being used, Dr. Bose, I just need some.
The piloting is but one featured. If you'll remember what you received on November 15th.
Yes, I have it.
The summary of their presentation talked about more than piloting. Obviously, if you're gonna pilot things that you might consider from the piloting, selecting the best, you've got to pilot them for a whole school year. So the piloting has been going on for a whole school year, so you have a whole school year's experience when you select the best instructional materials from the piloting experience. They explained that to us on October 8th and invited you, and I believe you did visit some pilot sites.
Yes, I did.
So that's why the piloting is ongoing now.
So, and it's my understanding that there will be another report
Yes, ma'am.
upcoming. Could you just
Well,
remind me again when the phase 2 report is supposed to come before the board? Because I can't remember if Dr. Terezzi said it was April or the end of the year.
I believe she did, Mrs. Krieger, but I'm telling you, I don't remember either. With great certainty, I believe it was April, and if I'm wrong, I will write to you tomorrow and tell you so.
Okay.
I'll tell you when it is if it's not April.
Okay, my only other question, is there a charge to the district for the materials that are now being used in the piloting program?
Yes.
Okay, could you forward that figure to the board, Dr. Bose?
Yes.
And also, I'd like a financial detail. It's my understanding from talking to some of the teachers who are piloting this curriculum, and this came directly from them, that it is a very expensive curriculum. So I think to avoid any problems in the future, I think if the board is made aware of those costs, that we can do a better job in planning for our budget next year and being able to afford this particular curriculum, because what I have seen in the classroom is very exciting to me. What I've seen the children experience in these piloting classrooms makes me saddened for those who are delayed in the incorporation of this new curriculum into their language arts program. I'm not saying that our other children are not getting adequate language arts curriculum at this time. I guess it's just excitement on my part to see the new and updated curriculum as this board has promised to do in the classrooms. And this piloting program is only supposed to be until the end of the year, correct?
That's correct.
And then the board will be asked at that time to either approve or whatever.
Well, that's correct. The piloting is essentially testing of a variety of publishers' textbook products, so the staff can determine from their actual experience which one appears to be the better or the best, and the selection will be a matter of approval for this board.
And the only other thing I'd like to say is that I would encourage each board member to take some time to visit those classrooms this year that are experiencing with the piloting program.
Thank you. More questions or comments?
I can say that the book's being tested ninth grade level, found very exciting. As a matter of fact, my son came home and actually brought up how great the new literature books are. I don't know when they flip-flop, if he's gonna be just as equally enthused, but they were very nice textbooks, and they did bring a very well-rounded curriculum into the English department that kind of snazzed up, which is generally a dreary subject for some students.
Well, books like other commercial products are generally improved over time.
Sure.
The newer versions look better and perform better than the older versions, and that's probably what he's experiencing.
Well, yeah, he made references to what they had last year,
Right.
which would have also been carried over to ninth grade under a traditional, they're similar textbooks
Right.
with our 8th and 9th grade English program.
They're a series, and so generally, most schools would select the same series, so there's a continuity through elementary through secondary schools. So the kids involved in the piloting see the difference, because they were used to the older series, and next year, as in your son's case, he's getting the pilot, so it's a difference from the old series, and it looks pretty
Tremendously, though. It is not just another newer rewrite of the
Right.
same old thing, which sometimes they tend to be.
That's correct.
And I think you ought to pass that to Carol, because I know she had a very difficult time here when she gave her reading review, and there were some questions over the pilot, and some concerns over whether it was a changing of implementation or so drastic a change in how we were delivering our materials. And dealing with materials certainly makes it a little bit more understandable how how she felt comfortable just moving forward to get that opinion out there from the student body and the parents. I see no problems. I look forward to seeing how they progress.
You sound like a happy consumer.
I don't know which one we'll end up with. I'll wait for round two, but at least it's nice to see us focusing on updating our textbooks and our curriculum, the material that the students are dealing with regularly.
More questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next recommendation is a follow-up item. You will remember that Mr. Wood was considering additional vehicles for a walking area, now determined to be a riding area for school transportation. And so recommendation D requests your approval to lease 4 84-passenger transit-type buses at a daily rate of $75 a vehicle from M.A. Brightbill Body Works, Inc. And this lease will extend through the end of the school year.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Recommendation E is for a change order, again, to the completion of the Pendale project. This in the amount of $9,700 to Built Right Contractors for repairing deteriorated fascia and existing roof deck around the perimeter of Pendale Middle School auditorium.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mr. Schilling. Questions or comments on item 4E?
Question?
Yes.
Or Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
With no notice. Do we have enough money in the bond fund to keep paying these bills?
Yes, we do. Mr. Wood had a contingency built in, and it's almost depleted at this point, but we have enough
Today? How are we gonna run out of money?
We're down to $50,000. After this, we have to start going into the general fund.
Thank you.
More questions or comments?
Only in respect to Bill, there was a motion made last month dealing with the general fund to be used for other business, for
That's
these
correct.
purposes.
That's
And
why I
so,
said
so
that.
far as of yet, you have not yet
We
entered
have not
into the
tapped the
general
general
fund.
fund as of today.
Okay.
More questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item F is a recommendation that you approve the transportation service contract for the remainder of this school year as presented on item 11596.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Krieger,
Second.
second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments on item 4F? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item G, I believe, was indirectly mentioned by Ms. Mengel relative to the North Monco school expansion. This is an agreement that you have represented with item number 116-96 to permit the temporary storage of stormwater in exchange for a grant of land use by our, in this case, will be a transportation department as well as athletic at North Penn High School. And the agreement as reviewed by, I believe, Mr. Bartle. Have you reviewed this agreement?
Are you referring to G? That's the one that Mr. Belvich will have.
All right, and so this is an agreement with North Monco for this temporary arrangement during its period of construction. I recommend that you approve the contract.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Schilling. Questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Recommendation H is a recommendation for the board to accept gifts as noted here to the schools in the amounts represented, and it requires board approval and acceptance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mrs. Krieger. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Now we're at personnel, page BA3. With our effort to streamline this and reduce confusion, you'll find that the personnel reports, depending on your preference, could be moved all at once, or you can move the nominations, the resignations, the retirements as separate items, or even if you wanted to separate any individual from the group, you might do that. At this point, I suspect you would prefer that we would handle each action of the variety of personnel initiatives separately, and so I would recommend that you approve the nominations of 12 support staff as presented on item BA-5.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Schilling. Questions or comments for item, I believe, 1A? No questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
1B is retirement action. There's one professional retirement and one support staff retirement, both presented on item BA-5.
Motion made by Mrs. Scherr.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments on item 1B? Sharice.
Mr. Clemens, I would just like to acknowledge at this time a fond farewell to Mrs. Deborah Moser, who is listed under professional retirement. And I would like to personally thank her for the contribution that she made in my daughter's life as her second grade teacher. We were very distressed when Mrs. Moser went out on leave, and at this time I would like to wish her the very best in the forthcoming years. And I thank her again tremendously.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 1C is resignations. There are 4 support staff resignations, also presented on page BA-5.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey. Second by Mr. Schilling. Questions or comments on item 1C? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Personnel item 1D, one contract change presented on page BA-6.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey. Second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
1E is a recommendation for your approval for salary corrections, 1 professional staff and 1 support staff on page BA-6.
So moved. Motion made by Mr. Hill.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments on item 1E? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 1F, there are contains 19 salary changes as presented on page BA-7.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Scherr. Questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Abstention, Mr. Clemens.
Thank you.
Correction, 8 ayes, 1 abstention.
Excuse me, item under personnel, I, number 2, is a recommendation for your approval of additions and changes to extra duty assignments for the 1996-97 school year, presented on item 114-96.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Hill. Second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments for item number 2 under personnel?
Question.
Okay?
The salary changes here for the extra duty pay is being driven by contractual requirements?
Yes.
And not due to any alterations in, optional alterations in salary, correct? Strictly driven by the contract? Okay, thank you.
More questions or comments on item number 2? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Item number 3 seeks your recommendation of approvals of additions to the professional and support staff substitute list for the current school year.
Motion made by Mr. Schilling.
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments? Item number 3. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 4 is a recommendation for your approval of salaries due to prep level increases presented as item BA-9.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Mengel. Questions or comments on student travel? I'm sorry.
Student travel.
Prep level changes, excuse me. Number 4. Getting ahead. Sorry. It's my turn to do it. Questions or comments on item 4?
Essentially, Judy, the same. Wilson, this is all, rather than assume, like have it answered, it's all driven by contractual requirements.
That's correct.
And if any of these are, if any of this personnel involved the URIP replacement, will we also be keeping track of that because this board is looking to get a handle on exactly how this evolves?
Dennis and I are.
Make adjustments and
Yes.
credit that towards the URIP as we follow it so that we can have an honest review
Correct.
and board make sound decisions in the future. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item J is a request for your approval of student travel. In this case, there are 5 trips presented on page BA-10.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey.
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments on this time, student travel?
I have just one
Sure.
question. I recall the description of item number 5 and the green sheet that was submitted to the board on that particular item. Is there any reason why that's the only student travel that we would get a green sheet on? I mean, is there some kind of specifics that we have to?
It's treated differently than all student travel. It's a senior class trip.
Okay.
It requires at least 60% of the seniors choose to participate, and because of the nature of the travel and the overnight stay, we bring it to the board by tradition and practice for board approval.
Are we indebted liability-wise, you know, if,
Not Mrs. Krieger any more than any other student travel. For instance, the wrestling team goes to a tournament, or our polo team, water polo team just won the state championship, so they traveled to the tournament site. This travel is no different than that in terms of our liability.
This is an overnight stay though, isn't it, Dr.
Yes,
Bowes?
it is.
And we're covered with our liability.
Yes, we are.
okay.
And Mr. Mosey, as long as it's a school-sponsored event, we'll cover it.
Thank you.
More questions or comments on the senior class trip?
Only, I just wonder, do we ever take in suggestions? I know this has been traditional for the last few years anyway. I don't know what, way back, I can't quite recall whether we're 94.
I believe 94 was the last time for this trip. More recently, there have been one-day trips to New York City.
Last year was a one-day trip.
One-day trip to
Last
New
year
York City.
wasn't,
Circle line, tour around
the
Manhattan.
numbers, okay.
Yes.
I just wonder if this has come through SGA recommendations, if it's through students, or if this, you know, if we've established, because more often than not, I've seen Mount
Student
Airy.
interest is considered strong.
More questions or comments on the senior class trip proposal to Mount Airy Lodge?
Just the administrator in charge of this activity that will be on, that will attend this trip. Okay, will she be attending? She'll be there with the highest ranking administrator?
Yes.
Okay, I'd just like to say that that gives me a whole lot of confidence. I believe that our kids are going to have a good time on this trip and that they're going to make us proud. But knowing that Brenda Dickerson, of all female administrators, is on this trip, I've had opportunity to watch her deal with large groups of students and control behaviors of large groups of students, and I find her quite impressive and most capable, and just glad to see that she's taking this trip. Thank you.
More questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You on the trip?
The next item is a report for your information. Vandalism report found on page BA-11. That takes us to other business. Well, this, obviously, it's our financial director's recommendation, but it's also mine that the board approve and accept the auditor's report for fiscal year which ended June 30th, 1996, and for which you recently received in this room a report from the auditor.
Motion made by Mr. Schilling. Second by Mr. Moser. Questions or comments?
One comment, just to suggest that if you'd like the formal copy, Dennis has them in his office. We received photocopies just, the audience for mass reproduction, but there are formal copies in Dennis's office for any board member that would like to have them. And just so you each know that, because I certainly secure one each year, but just so everyone's aware.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will comment on item 5B, as I noted earlier. I have pulled this from the agenda. Mr. Kelly has informed, I believe it's Mr. Bradbury and Mr. Franklin, that they were not to be here tonight. We do need to discuss under other business as to when we plan to bring them back.
Mr. Clemens, I'd like to make a suggestion, and since the administration is not prepared to discuss the technology component on December the 2nd, I would like to make a suggestion that we make a vote on the bond on December the 2nd, or discuss whatever it needs to be, but I think we ought to do it on December the 2nd.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about it now.
So you should be scheduled.
Open it for discussion. I stated earlier also that I believe a few administrators and a few board members had discussed with me the need to postpone the discussion on technology on the night of reorganization. That is now a given.
So
Okay?
why don't we substitute?
So we do have some time that night to bring the bond counsel in. My question would be, if we do it that night, do we make that a combination work session? Or I should say, do we make that a reorg meeting, then move into a work session, and then ask Ken Weir to post it as also a night for a special action meeting also? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's what I'm suggesting. I mean, I think we have to get moving on this bond, and, we still have some concerns, but, we gotta wrap this thing up. Let's just give it one more week or whatever it takes, and let's get on. I mean, we have to start making some decisions on this money.
And I suggested it be designated as a special action meeting dealing with finance, and under the finance, such as the finance committee report is done here at action meetings that we receive from the bond, and then subsequently, if consensus is there, move forward with the vote.
Do we have to have, or is
Do
there a
we need
need
to
for a
separate?
special work session a few days prior? Well, can't, that's Thanksgiving, right, Thursday. I mean, it's getting too.
For Mr. Clemens, I need clarification. Are you expecting Mr. Bradbury and Mr. Franklin to come with a definite figure, or are you proposing that you're going to discuss other projects that evening?
See, that's the problem. Until they know a definite number, they can't punch all that stuff in to find out what
That's correct.
what all the fees are gonna be, the exact numbers.
That's correct. And it's tough for them to do it if you're gonna plan a work and action session the same night.
But can't we take a vote and come to an agreement that night?
No,
Well, as Ken
what
just,
do they propose?
You can come to an agreement that night.
Ken just suggested that we could attempt to come to a consensus on Monday night. okay?
The
And maybe
first.
even have them there that night, and just so we can answer further questions. But then on the 10th, when it's a regularly scheduled work session, have a special action meeting that night.
They have to be there both nights. I don't want to inconvenience you.
Well, I
They
think,
don't have to be there for the
They-
vote.
They don't have to be there.
Don't worry about
for
that. They
They
make
work
them.
for us.
Okay.
They work for us.
So you're saying have a work
I agree,
session?
I think they might have to be there for both nights.
You're saying that we have a work session on the first, and then we take a vote on the second?
No, I'm saying, I
Because
have
the
a calendar
second
here.
is,
The second is the Monday night.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's reorganization.
I thought you said Tuesday.
So we have reorganization, and we move right into a work
Right.
session to discuss bond.
I would agree to
Okay?
that.
We also have the gentleman there who we need that night.
I would agree
to
to
answer
that.
questions.
Can I just get an understanding of what you want them to do on the second? You want them to sit here while we discuss what projects we're going to do?
I agree, I don't understand.
I don't understand.
The purpose for having them here, because we have to decide what we want to put into the bond, we have to decide the amount of the bond. There will be fees associated with that bond. They can give us a high-end fee, they can give us a low-end fee, and the fee will fall somewhere in between there. The fee is going to be the fee. I mean, I don't understand why they have to be here to discuss what the exact fee for the exact dollar figure is, when we don't understand what the exact dollar figure is that we're about to propose for a bond issue. So
for
what
instance-
else can they add to it?
For instance, is the refunding of an existing bond that we have right now. It's a $5 million refunding that we talked about earlier. It wasn't new money, but it's refunding. They said that, or I believe at the meeting that they were here, I wasn't here, that they had predicted or projected what the actual savings would be. I've had many phone calls from board members. They want that expanded upon as to really what the real savings. They wanted a better explanation on why we really should refund the $5 million bond. That's one, for
I mean,
instance.
And that's legitimate.
I
That's-
wasn't aware that that was still an issue.
And to
because it
answer
had been
audience
explained
questions.
once before.
Mr. Cummings, might I add for December 2, that we follow up on Mr. Wood's suggestion of appointing an architect to do the project that the board approved tonight. That we discuss that on December 2 meeting.
The RFP.
Is that enough time for you, Art, to come
Yeah,
together?
I'm looking
But he
just
won't
for
be able to be
direction
here
on
that
the
night.
modulars and not the NAP upgrade. That
He
will
has
come
to
to
be
you in a
convinced.
second at a later time.
Art, you would need to be at Temenson that night, correct? So but he could still have a recommendation.
He could still have a recommendation, or we could, what time's your appointment? What time?
I'll check that and see if I have it through.
We might be able to put you on here first, and you can leave.
Okay.
If you're lucky.
Bill?
Yeah, I just have to, I guess, vent a little. We've been talking about a bond. We knew we needed a bond back in May, not sooner. We've talked and we've talked, we've met and we've talked. And I was just, there's always more questions, and I'm wondering if there's enough answers, that we're ever gonna get to the point where people can make a decision. We zip right through that other thing on modular without having all the details. Please don't talk when I'm talking.
All right.
We're going to do the Keenest Road without financial information, but we're going to fight over how much we're paying for printers, for computers in the bond issue. And I don't see us ever getting this done, Tom. Not a personal affront, but I understand your frustrations, but I think maybe I'm just echoing yours. When is enough enough? When are we going to do something? And the other thing that there's seems to be consensus among the members here that the bond issue be written very tightly about what you can do with the bond money. And if we go back to the motion for the modulars, it seemed to be some nebulous things there, and I think maybe we're going to get ourselves into trouble if we don't reevaluate that consideration. Thank you.
Bill, I share some of your concerns. We certainly do need to have some clarity, though, on what the SNAP proposal is going to involve in order to determine the figures in the bond. And since that just occurred here tonight, these things are decisions that are evolving here that seem to be affecting the bond. If you recall, when we were going for a bond in June, retrospectively. I wish we had. It was only a $20 million bond.
right.
So as the summer's gone on, certainly there's been a lot of effort put forward into increasing the,
always gonna be
what gets
something new
thrown
come
into
up.
the,
We're not
with
a
the kitchen
static-
sink.
It's not static,
But,
we're always changing, something has to be done.
Right, and
Okay,
then-
$50,000 left in the bond for Penndale.
Let's get back, right, let's get back to Monday night with the hope that we can close this out by no later than the 10th. I think that's what I'm hearing. All board, Sharice.
Okay. I agree with Pat's suggestion, or whoever it was, that we have a work session subsequent to our reorganization to talk about the bond. I, for one, have many questions in regards to this bond issue because of how the cost has escalated since the board last discussed it. There are items listed that don't have anything to do with the high school, the VOTEC expansion, or the elementary enrollment solution that are being included on this bond. Questions have been asked, but not specifically answered, and I would hope that the board, myself included, would take the opportunity to meet with either Mrs. Shear and Mr. Hill and other administrators between now and the 2nd to iron out any clarity that they need on these particular issues. But I, for one, believe that this board needs to take the time to discuss the amount of this bond, because as it's proposed right now, it is the largest bond that this school district has ever gone out for. So, having said that, I don't think that this board is being remiss in its duty to make sure that all the i's are dotted and all the t's are crossed before we can support it. And having said that, I agree that December 2nd would be the appropriate time for a work session because of the issue of the refunding. I do believe it's appropriate to have our bond counsel here that evening to answer the questions that may come up in light of that issue. And I think that this board will be prepared to take final action on a bond at its December 10th meeting.
So then, Art, if Monday night we do reorg, we move into bond, but then whether you can or cannot make it, at least you could perhaps prepare green sheets for the board ahead of time. We could consider Monday night a work session. Perhaps we would not have any action that night. Could we wait until the 10th and combine the bond and giving you the green light from the architect on the 10th? Everybody clear on that?
Mr. Clement, I just have a question. Why can't we have a work session and take a vote on the 2nd?
I don't know. What was the reason?
Because it's from the consensus
I
of the
didn't hear
board's
it.
work
That's why I
session is when
meant-
they
I'll tell you,
develop
I'll tell you
the
why.
statement.
No, I'll tell you why. Hold on, let me think.
I really hate to
It is
drag it
because
past
for
the
one
2nd.
reason, when Mr. Bradbury and Mr. Franklin come, they're not gonna have the final numbers.
Okay.
We have to debate and come up with a final number, then they have to go back and punch it into their computer, and they bring it back on what the final numbers are gonna be for everybody. So we really need to wait. So if we wait till the 10th, we might as well wait for, just have the action meeting, we'll have a special action meeting on the 10th, but no action on the 2nd.
I would really think
Now,
it's
Mr.
appropriate
Clements-
to have them at the action meeting. The committee meeting is one where there's gonna be a lot of discussion and debate that is.
That's
we're
right,
dealing
and I would
with.
hope after we do this last debate, because I hate to keep hearing about the things that are on the bond issue. When I left here after our last meeting, we discussed every item that I put on that bond issue. I don't want to hear how it's expanded beyond what we thought. We talked about all the items. We didn't put in some items because we knew they needed further discussion. I'm sorry if people didn't understand that there were issuance costs to go on top of that. That's a normal part of the bond issue. But every item was discussed. And I just hope that when we do this the next time, that we do come to a consensus that we write down before we go into the next one. Because, I want to make sure everybody is clear before we leave the room on what's included in there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Don?
Just wanted to point out to Bill, if it helps any, that I see this bond now up to close to 32.5 coming directly from an effort from the strategic plan. Should we have gone out for money, as Mrs. Scher had said back in June, it would have been something like 22 million. We are taking a recently finished strategic plan and fleshing some of them out in real action. And I think that's what the community expected. I believe that's what everybody put their effort towards. The facility strategic plan lists in detail pretty much a desire to upgrade our existing facilities and to move forward with better and greater stewardship of district assets. So I'm pleased to see some of those things on the list. There are other things that I'd like to see maybe eliminated and we pay in cash, i.e. the shrubbery. I will not put shrubbery on a 20-year note, and maybe we can talk about paying for that out of general fund, whatever. But those are the discussions that are rightfully should come before the community. And Dennis, I understand your frustration. You feel like you explained things many, many times over, and we think we understand, and we come away with, other things that happen. I believe the reason this board is being so precautious and maybe asked too many questions is because we never, ever, ever again want to see a $15 water bottle on a 20-year note. This board doesn't want to be guilty of that kind of action. That's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
More questions or comments? Okay, that's what we're going to do on Monday night. Everybody clear on that? What's going to happen Monday night? I need to go over it one more time. Everybody's clear?
Yes.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
Please. The next recommendation is with your approval, appoint the local auditors, Mallory, Falconero and Company, for the next 2 fiscal years at a rate of $13,500 per year.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Mangle, second by Mr. Hill. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Recommendation D is to authorize the board solicitor to prepare an agreement for the sale of the real estate on the Keenest Road, known as the Keenest Road property, with the North Penn School District as the seller and David Cutler Group, Inc. as the buyer, upon terms and conditions pursuant to state statute as cited. The completed agreement should be acted upon by further motion of the board at a future public meeting. This is a direction to the solicitor to prepare for that.
So moved. Is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Hill. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Scher. Questions or comments on the motion? David.
Ladies and gentlemen, we should not sell the Keenest Road property for 2 reasons. The first is that strategically the North Penn School District may need the property or some portion of it in the future to help resolve potential growth problems. You may or may not agree with the need to retain the property as part of a long-range plan, but the second reason for not selling the property is purely economic. I believe that it will actually cost the taxpayers of this district more to sell the property than it will be to keep it in the long run. The assumptions that I base my opinion on are as follows, and I do have a handout for all of you. I hope I made enough for all of you. Bill. The public does not have a copy of this. I prepared this for the board.
Do you think we?
I don't mind if it's distributed to them at all, but I prepared this for the board. I'll wait, whatever your pleasure is.
Well,
I would say that as long as Ken has a copy, that he can make a copy for anyone who wants
Right.
one afterwards.
I have no problem with that at all.
No.
My assumptions are as follows. The property was purchased for approximately $6.5 million. The property is zoned, which means that 136 homes could possibly be built there. I know this will be an issue of debate, but on average, I've made my calculations that there could be 1 child in each one of those homes, 136 additional children. I assume that the homes will sell for at least $300,000 at an assessed value of 5.4%. school district tax millage is 278.5. 10% of the homes will change hands each year, generating transfer taxes of 0.5%. Each child in North Penn School District on average costs $8,000 a year to educate. This year I believe the number's closer to $8,500, but that's an aberration. Local taxes provide about 85% of the total revenue. So the local cost to educate a child is $8,000 times 0.85, or approximately $6,800 per year. $6,800 times 136 children is $924,800. Our local revenue to educate the children is the property taxes, which I've estimated for those 136 homes at $613,000. Transfer tax on 10%, $20,000, for a total revenue figure of about $634,000. Now the deficit is the cost to educate the children plus the revenue that we collect locally from property tax and transfer tax. So I see every year that there's a deficit of $290,000 approximately to educate these children. This is a tax that we would have to raise in order to meet our budgets. So I've taken the cost of financing this property for $6.5 million, again assuming that selling the property for $6.5 million returns the principal to us at any time, so I'm only interested in the interest. This is the cost. The first year, and Mr. Kelly provided me with these numbers. I believe Mrs. Scher also has them. You can read them off the sheet. We can make copies of that. First year interest, $298,000 plus $70,000 in fees. The deficit, again, for locally, when local revenue to educate the children is $290,000. The first year it will cost us $77,000, essentially the cost of issuing the bond. After that, the interest values on the interest on the bond continue to go down as they decrease. I have added the interest. I have added the years of the revenue deficit. I assumed all things were flat. I didn't try to project what that would be. In 10 years, if my assumptions are correct, the total interest on a $6.5 million bond would be $1,813,000 in total interest. But our 10-year revenue deficit, locally financing the education, would be $2,908,000, leaving a cost to the district for financing the bond as opposed to raising taxes to pay for those children would be $1 million, over $1 million. My point in all this is that keeping this property in open space eliminates a huge negative variable in the not-too-distant future of this district. Cost aside, where are we going to put 136 additional children in 2 years? What if by some stroke of fate that they were all elementary age? Where would you put them? Would we have to redistrict at the elementary level? The figures I mentioned do not include the cost of providing more classrooms for those children, whatever the number may be. What would it cost to add more modulars for 136 children? Certainly more than the $77,000 in the first year. In a study done in Montgomery Township on the impact of converting commercial property to residential, it was estimated that 60% of the children would be at the elementary age. Keeping the property in open space eliminates the negative variable of more children and the need for more facilities, such as classrooms, buses, and staff in a growing school system. This is not about resurrecting the issue of a second high school. That issue is resolved. We are moving forward with plans to address our classroom needs in grades 10, 11, and 12. This issue is directly about your fiscal responsibility. We have not done a true financial assessment that will determine the impact of selling or retaining this property. We all have a responsibility to make certain that our decisions are well-grounded in fact. Fiscal responsibility is an ideal that many of you espouse at every meeting, and one that many of you have publicly promised during your election campaigns. Prove to the public that you're not trying to sell Penis Road property just to end a building issue. Take the time to perform a financial analysis. Look at the long-term implications of adding more students, and make a decision that's in the best interest of the taxpayers of this community today and in the future. If you do nothing else, take the time to debate or disprove my assumptions. And with that said, I move that we table the resolution to authorize the sale of the Penis Road property.
hold on, before the question.
Just got a motion.
There's been a motion made, is there a second?
What was the
There's a
motion?
second, okay? There's been a motion made to table the motion.
That's correct. Motion has been made and seconded. The motion is
Correct.
not debatable. You should vote on the motion to table. The affirmative vote is a vote to table, and that would mean that you would not then move to the main motion. A negative vote would be not to table, and you would then subsequently move to the main motion.
Or continued discussion.
Continue discussion.
Discussion on the main motion.
At this point in time, you have a motion to table and a second. There is no discussion at this point. The
Right.
motion on the floor is the motion to table. You should vote on that immediately.
Okay, okay. Okay, there's a motion made to table the motion, and there's been a second. All those in? Mr. Allen. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Roll call.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
No.
Mrs. Krieger?
No.
Ms. Mingle?
No.
Mr. Mosey?
No.
Mrs. Scher?
No.
Mr. Schilling?
No.
Mr. Whites?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
No.
I have 7 voting no, 2 voting yes regarding the table.
All right, you now move to the main motion, and you're open for discussion again.
Okay, we're back to the main motion. Let's stay over on this side, then we'll come over. Pat?
Dennis, the tax millage is 278?
278.5.
Okay, isn't that going up next year? Didn't you give us, I
Well-
thought during the strategic plan, you had a breakdown of how our millage is going to increase over the next 2 years.
Well, but that was based on if we did the strategic plan. We won't know if the millage is increasing until we do our budget.
Okay, but there's a good possibility that we'll not stay at 278.
That's correct.
And we are paying $8,500 a student. I thought it was more like $7,800 a student.
Well, as I explained to both Mrs. Shara and Mr. Whites, this year it'll come out to be about $8,500 a student, but we have to remember that we paid $4.1 million in retroactive salaries, so that this year is an aberration, as even Mr. White said. This is an odd year, so it'll be in the area of about $8,000 is what we normally spend.
So we're up from that $7,800 figure that we've always been working with.
Well, it goes up every year as our expenses increase.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Clemens.
Okay. Bill?
Excuse me. David's report here, assuming it's accurate or even close to accurate, I would say I believe this is the third financial analysis we've had of the Keenest Road property. And everyone that I have seen has said the same thing to me, that it's going to cost us money to sell it. And I don't understand, and I've never heard an explanation of people telling me what is the financial rationale for selling it. I know the political rationale. That's an obvious one. But what is the financial rationale for selling the property? As somebody taking all the reports that the old board members, Tom and Vicki, and Don and I, and David have received, all have said it's going to cost you money to sell it, with the addition of new children and their cost to educate. And we always know a household does not support its own children. So I have not heard from anybody the financial rationale for selling it. If anybody has it, if anybody can tear these things apart, these 3 different reports, I'd be interested in hearing it. Thank you.
Sharice?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clemens. My financial rationale for supporting the sale of Keenest Road has everything to do with the way that this district has historically worked their real estate business. Many people in the community are very aware of how a board in the past acquired land called Knapp Farm for the intention of building a facility in our future. What was done with that property? Nothing. In fact, the right of first return was given to that property owner, and they now own their property again.
And I believe it was 6 months after that return of the property went back, this district went out and bought Keenest Road. Now, with any kind of financial foresight, in the view or purview of our previous administrators, one would think that they would have utilized Knapp Farm for a school to accommodate projected enrollment in the future. As a taxpayer, I have no interest in paying for a piece of property that is going to sit idle and vacant. I don't understand how any members of the community or the board can call board members, can come up to the podium and advocate for technology, improvements in our school district, advocate for new curriculum, new books, advocate for better classroom size, more classroom facilities, and yet want us to sit on a piece of empty property and have you pay money for a vacant piece of property. Now, having said that, this board, when we were candidates, ran on a promise not to approve a second high school. We followed through on that promise. Does it make sense to keep a piece of property that you're not going to build on? And this board has no intention of building a second high school. The issue is done. This board has approved to do an addition at our current high school. Should the developer choose to build homes on this property, I choose to go with the predictions made by our finance manager this evening and deal with 42 students to 50 students who may be generated from those homes. Because if you drive through the new neighborhoods over there now, Mr. Kelly is absolutely correct.
Just as a clarification, I said 72.
I thought you
Basic-
said 42.
Adjusting it for the new development, Mr. Krieger. I did say 42 out of, I said 46 out of Gwinnett.
Right.
Okay,
I mean, you know, well, it doesn't matter.
okay.
If the children come, the board will have to deal with it. But I don't think,
If they build it, they
Mr.
will come.
Clemens, you know,
In all
Please.
fairness, it's our turn.
this board made a promise, and this board is following through on its promise. Enough said.
Ms. Mangle?
Yes, Mr. Weitz, do you have any factor in here for the possibility of those that choose to go with private schools?
No, quite honestly, as I said, it was just on average, one child, PEL has one figure, the Montgomery Township assessment that was done on the Witchwood track, another assessment, one was 0.8. So I chose to pick one, quite honestly. It was my choice.
So
These are my assumptions, that's what they are.
David, that's not a problem. I appreciate you doing the extra homework. I only ask if you have a factor in here for private education. That's
No,
all.
I don't.
Okay, these are going to be very fine homes, and obviously a certain sign here of affluence. It's not unlikely that these folks may in fact be also private school preferred folks. Anyway, this motion tonight, Mr. Clemens, just to clarify, is to authorize the preparation of an agreement for sale, and that this again has to come back to this board for another approval in the future. Is that what I understand here?
That's the way I understand it.
Okay, so this will
Yes,
come here
that's
twice,
correct.
once tonight and again in the future.
We'll need to come back.
Okay, I would like to think at that time that Mr. Kelly takes the time, if the five of you agree, to put together a financial impact for this board. Our analysis that he do along with Mr. Scher, Mr. Hill, and all those that we depend upon for financial services.
Thank you. Are there five that agree with that? Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
No problem. Okay, is that all? Donna?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Okay, Mr. Hill.
Yes, a couple of things come to mind, and I appreciate the effort to do this analysis, and I appreciate your viewpoint. A couple of things come to mind. One of them, of course, is the district millage. That history says that's going to go up each year, so that's a factor that wasn't rolled into here. The other fact is that $300,000 homes, or that high price, usually in a development of that size, a good percentage of those kids will be going to private schools.
Only because of your decision.
That can be debatable, but that's usually what happens, because they can afford it. The other assumption that holding this land is more tax dollar makes more sense than selling the land would lead you to believe that we should go out and buy all the empty land in the North Penn School District, because that way we can save money. I don't think that's the business we're in. We're not in the land development or the land retention business, and that I think that maintaining that property over there is always a risk as an insurance. There's always a problem when you own property of that type, that there's a cost associated with it relative to insurance and how that property is used and how it's watched over, and it's always a risk on the district of that property. So based upon those facts is where I am.
Okay, sure, Vicki.
Okay. First, I think I need to draw home again that Dennis did these numbers on the debt service, the interest rate on this bond. As I'm reading these, Dennis, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I see this bond through its fruition, I see $10,828, a total of $10,828, 4.228 is interest.
That's correct.
On this. David, I'm not going to go through all your numbers or debate your assumptions, except to say that, along with Don, I'd say that when you're talking $300,000 homes, and when the PEL ratio is talking at 2.4 per household, I don't think there's too many single parents with 2 children making up that 2.4. I think that you're going to have people moving in at a later stage of their life, because not too many young growing families, I won't say there won't be some, I'm saying not as many young growing families can start out and build their family on a $300,000 home. And as on your transfer tax numbers, I'm just glancing at these. I'm not going to sit here getting these here this night to tear them apart, but a glaring question I have, concern I have is on your transfer tax. My understanding is it's a 1% transfer tax on $300,000 homes. That's $3,000 per home divided in half for the district share versus the township share. We should be getting $1,500 off of 136 homes. I think we're talking more in the neighborhood of 240,000.
My assumption was that only 10% of the homes would change hands in any one year.
What about the first year? You're using the first year.
Okay, I'll take the $20,000 out.
But your very first year, when you said what we were losing in our very first year, what about the very initial transfer cost, which comes to $204,000 to offset what you projected as a loss in the first year?
Once again, I said they were assumptions. I said that I would like us to take the time to look at the impact. I am not a financial analyst in any terms. I was trying to take what I knew about this. Again, just to look at the overall assumptions. I still believe that it will cost us more in the long run to sell this property because of the children that will come into this district, and it will be to keep the property.
Okay, well, you asked about your numbers, and all I'm saying is I see the initial transfer tax when you're analyzing the first year's impact, if you were going to break it down that way, certainly the very initial one, which you know they have to pay.
My request again was that somebody more proficient at this than I do a financial impact so that we all understood what the implications were of holding this property or selling this property. I did the best I could, tear the numbers apart. That wasn't my issue. My issue was that I think somebody competent should do it for us and the public to know whether it's going to cost us more to hold this property than to sell.
Okay, and to Bill, you asked a question that you'd like some of us to explain why we consider this a good deal for the district. I'm going to tell you quite honestly, it goes back to some of the comments made earlier at the podium. Comments regarding what this builder paid for that property versus what we purchased it from them because of the way it was zoned and because we were required as a public entity going under condemnation to pay X number of dollars, not based on what it was developed to be, but what it could be used by that particular holder of the property. That created an inflation that I don't think you're gonna find another builder out there willing to pay. We're required to offer to them at what they returned it to. This is about the only builder, I believe, out there that will find this kind of value in it, and that's because he's only returning the money that we paid him originally, which has served him in gaining interest. So what's his initial bottom line expense for the property? It's going to be his original price to the halls. It's not a loss of $6.2 million for him because he's returning what he had gained from us at one time. To find another developer out there who does not already have invested in plans, who is sitting there looking at undeveloped lot, which they're looking to make a profit off of, I don't believe there's a lot of hope out there for full recovery of our funding with anyone else. So I'm kind of grateful that this arrangement has been suitable to Mr. Cutler, and I don't expect these houses will not be up in a year. He is going to move through his approvals. He's going to move forward with the township. Like any builder, it's going to be a phase-in. You will have, it's been 3-4 years for, I guess Montgomery Lee out there, that they've been phasing in. The students will be coming in a different cycle than what we're seeing. And I guess the bottom line is, where do we have a reason to believe we need a property of that size? We have 52 acres in Hatfield Plain site, the Lansdale Square site, or what is it, Art, now 48 that we've got with all these exchanges? 45 acres. We own how many acres within the school district minus the Keenest Road site, Art?
500 and some acres, 496 acres, I guess.
We're the holders of 596 acres within this district. And we do have set aside, if potential growth, which the only potential need you could see would be elementary, I believe, with the expansion of the high school. Our middle schools have a capacity of over 3,600 students with the renovations and the realignment that's there. And our elementary capacity is for 7,600 as it stands today. I think that we've given some serious consideration to the different factors that are in play. But quite frankly, I don't know where an opportunity such as this, and I don't know how we can justify holding on to this debt and this debt service when we're facing having to replace borrowed funds that were used for other purposes as it is. We have a $6 million debt to repay because the land was purchased when it was designated to other projects, and a lot of needs inside this district. There are wants and there are needs, and I don't think we have enough money.
If I can piggyback on you a second, we also have to look at, which is not included in here, and I wouldn't expect Mr. White to do that, we also have to include here the interest savings that we'll realize by putting it back toward debt service. That's not in here at all, so.
We would have a reduction of, when we have an equal reduction almost in the interest, that you're gonna have a turnaround, instead of a $334,000 expense, you're gonna.
I was estimating about $325,000
A
savings.
$325,000 savings, giving you a net difference of almost $600,000. Thank you.
Schilling.
Well, basically everything's been said. I think, I've seen other reports, people have given me other financial impact studies regarding this land. And, I heard the arguments, certain people I have to agree with Don. I think this impact, I appreciate you putting it together, David. I believe it's the worst case scenario. Basically everything else has been said, so I really have nothing else to say.
I'm ready to vote.
Mr. Clemens, 2 points, not that it matters, but I'll make the points anyway. Is that, number one, Mrs. Scher, because of the price that Cutler Group paid for that property, they're going to be interested in that property for many years to come. This is their home base. it's more efficient for them to build here than it is everywhere else, and they're moving way out west on the 422 corridor. If we don't sell it to them this year, they'll be interested in next year, and they'll be interested in the year after that, and they will always recover their money, and so will we. Finally, school districts in Bucks County, Mr. Hill, are actually have active programs in place to buy open space, and all of that open space purchase is done specifically to prevent growth in their school district, and those school districts have found it financially beneficial to buy open space and be property holders. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Let's take a vote. Okay? Okay, there's a motion. Boy, I forget who made the motion.
I did.
Mr. Hill, second by Mrs. Scher. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Let's do a poll, just for sure.
Mr. Allen? No. Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieger?
Yes.
Ms. Mingle?
Yes.
Mr. Mosey?
Yes.
Mrs. Scher?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Of 7 voting yes and 2 voting no.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, Treasurer's Report. Oh.
For the month of October 1996, we had cash receipts in the amount of $5,199,950.64. Receipts year to date, $84,293,000.
For all the folks who do watch Channel 16, and many do, I'd appreciate it if we could have some order for Mr. Kelly.
Receipts again year to date, $84,293,957.19. Disbursements for the month of October, $7,219,563.56. Disbursements year to date, $34,771,493.10. Investments as of October 31, 1996, $55,997,483.83. That's it.
Any questions or comments for Dennis, Treasurer's Report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 7.
I recommend approval of disbursements for the month of October in the amount of $6,381,482.19, and approval of the disbursements for the month of November in the amount of $779,942.88.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
For the month of October, again, we had, for food service, we had total income in the amount of $399,300.
I'm sorry. We missed 8.
We missed 7.
We missed 7, I'm sorry. We voted on 8 and we missed 7. I stand corrected. We need to come back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I let you go with 8, I know, I'm sorry. But before the food service report, we have another vote.
I recommend approval of the budget transfers for the 1996-97 fiscal year in the amount of $1,365,260.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Krieger. Questions or comments on item 7A? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to our food service report.
For the month of October, we had total income of $399,356.67. Raw food costs of $174,436.91, which gave us a gross profit on sales of $224,919.76. Our total operating costs for the month were $166,760.50, which gave us a profit for the month of $58,159.26, and a profit year-to-date of $100,233.16.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions or comments for Dennis on our food service report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 10, federal programs. Dr. Bose.
No report.
Questions or comments for Dr. Bose? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 11, our solicitor's report. I have no report.
Questions or comments for our solicitor?
Not specifically for solicitor, but about solicitor fees as they relate to bonds. I had a document prepared tonight by Dennis to go over the history of fees as they relate to bonds in this district, and over the last so many bond issues, and I was quite impressed with what we're paying now as opposed to what we were paying in the past. And so since we're not dealing with the bond tonight, and we'll, December 2nd, hope to have that list updated by Dennis Kelly as it relates to the amount that we'll be borrowing. And I want to share that with the public, Mr. Clemens, at that time.
Okay.
Also,
While we're on
Mr.
that, is
Clemens,
everybody, oh, I'm sorry.
If I may, could the board have a copy of that in advance?
Oh, absolutely.
In advance of our meeting?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
I'll get that out.
I'd just like to sum up some things, make sure everybody's clear that Monday night, December 2nd is reorg. After reorg, we will move into a work session to discuss bond and also to have a report from Art on his recommendation for architect. Then we will also advertise for a special action meeting the night of the work session, which is, what night is that? Tuesday the 10th. Any questions or comments on that? Motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mr. Schilling, seconded by Mrs. Scher. All those in favor say aye. Aye.